What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was trapped overnight in the Hyuga hot springs with Hinata? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Hyuga Hinata had been sleeping peacefully until something had caused her to open her eyes with a gasp. She frowned as she sat up and looked around, pushing her long hair back behind her ears. Her sharp eyes darted around the room, and she almost laughed when she realized that she had activated her Byakugan without even thinking about it. She had also grabbed and unsheathed the kunai knife from beside her bed. She sat absolutely still and strained her ears, but didn't hear anything or see anything, not even with her Byakugan. She sighed and deactivated her blood limit. Without it, her room was suddenly pitch black. Hinata blinked rapidly, trying to get her eyes to adjust, scowling. That was the drawback to using the Byakugan at night. Once it was deactivated, the eyes took a moment to adjust. Neji was currently working on the problem, at least, Hinata thought he still was. He had been mumbling about it for weeks, ever since his girlfriend, Tenten, had used this weakness to tackle Neji from behind. Hinata had witnessed this, and had actually howled with laughter, holding her ribs as they ached. Tenten had also been giggling madly, while Neji had been red enough to light up a small city. Hinata's eyes finally adjusted to the darkness, and she quickly scanned her room, just in case her Byakugan had missed something. But nothing was there, and she couldn't hear anything, so she shrugged and laid back down. But now she couldn't sleep. She sighed as she shoved at her pillow and tugged at her blankets, trying to get comfortable. But nothing worked. No matter how many times she shifted position, her eyes refused to stay closed, snapping open at every night noise, and her muscle refused to relax, tensing every time her eyes opened. This was ridiculous. She was supposed to meet her friends for training tomorrow, and she needed to get some sleep. But it just wouldn't come. With a cry of frustration, very rare in the young woman, Hinata threw off her blankets and stood up. Maybe if she took a walk around the quiet house, she could tire herself out. She slid open the door of her bedroom, stepped out into the hall, and was instantly attacked. All she had time to do was scream before a man, dressed as a ninja, slammed her into the wall with his full body weight and slapped a hand over her mouth. Not that that was necessary. He had knocked her breath out of her lungs when he slammed her into the wall, and she couldn't even draw a breath. Her eyes widened in panic, even as she began struggling. The man lifted a knife into her view and pressed the tip against the corner of her eye, just hard enough to create pressure, but not hard enough to puncture the skin. Hinata stopped struggling instantly. The message was clear. Stop struggling, or we take your eyes now, instead of waiting until after we kill you. Anger instantly surged up in Hinata. They were in her home. And what would Naruto say if he saw her give up so easily? Summoning every bit of chakra she had, Hinata shoved it outwards, knocking the man away from her and slamming him into the wall hard enough to rock the house. Hinata yelled again. Neji! She screamed loudly. He had to hear her, his room was just down the hall. His door opened instantly, followed by her father's, and Hanabi's. Hanabi, she'd be a target as well. No Hanabi, Hinata yelled, rushing for her sister's door. She got there at the same time as a second ninja, and she sent him flying with a well-placed kick. Get inside and stay there. Hinata snapped, shoving her sister back into her room. Arm yourself, but stay there. Hinata? Hanabi had never seen her sister like this. Hinata had never ordered her to do anything. Hinata ignored her sister's questions, shoving the younger girl back and slamming the door. Then she positioned herself in front of it. She would protect her little sister. She turned just in time to see the first ninja recover enough to rush her. But she had already activated her Byakugan, and she instantly activated her chakra shield and shoved it at him. It hit him as solidly as a wall and the man bounced off it. He landed on his back and actually slid a few more feet, only to stop right at Neji's feet as he rushed into the hall, with his Byakugan activated and armed with shuriken and a kunai knife. Neji almost tripped over the man, but he recovered enough to quickly strike at the man with his gentle fist, effectively sealing away his chakra. Then Neji rapped the ninja on the forehead with the handle of the kunai knife, knocking him out. The second ninja had already disappeared, and Hinata's could see 5 others already escaping over the wall of the compound and escaping, have obviously decided that the mission was a failure. Hinata deactivated her Byakugan, and as the adrenaline of the battle wore off, her vision blurred and she stared to sway. She had used so much chakra. Hinata. Hanabi opened her door just in time to jump forward and catch her older sister as her legs buckled and she fell. Hinata. Hiyashi and Neji echoed, rushing to her side. Hinata, are you hurt? Did they hurt you? Hiyashi demanded as he gently took Hinata into his arms and cradled her like a baby. His oldest daughter was so small and petite, and looked so fragile lying in his arms, white as a sheet. If those intruders has harmed one hair on her head. But then she opened her eyes and smiled up weakly at him. I'm okay, father. I just used too much chakra, too fast. I'm just a little dizzy. It will pass. You should have seen that shield she threw at the one we captured. Neji said, his eyes wide with amazement. It was like a wall of chakra, and it hit him hard. He actually bounced down the hallway. It was amazing. He smiled down at his younger cousin and ran a hand over her hair protectively. Are you sure you're okay? If they touched you, I can make sure the prisoner wishes you had killed him. I'm okay, Hinata assured her cousin. Hiyashi noticed in relief that she was already getting some color back in her cheeks. Can you sit up? He asked his daughter. Don't lie. If you're still weak, I can carry to you bed. Just help me sit up. Hinata told her father. He did, but even that small action seemed to exhaust her, and she sagged against his chest. He led her, holding her close. Hanabi was his heir. But Hinata was his treasure, even if he couldn't show it, his one reminder of his dead wife, Hinata's mother. She looked so much like her. Hanabi, are you all right? Hinata asked. Hanabi nodded. Of course, thanks to you. What? Hiyashi and Neji both asked, looking at Hanabi. Hinata protected me, Hanabi told her father and cousin. I would have walked right into an attack if she hadn't kicked one of the ninjas away from me and then pushed me back into my room. It's my job, I'm your big sister. Hinata said, reaching out and taking Hanabi's hand. Hanabi squeezed her sister's hand in thanks. Hinata winced suddenly, and Hiyashi instantly reached out and gripped his daughter's wrists, then turned her hands so he could see her palms. Both of Hinata's palms were red and blistered, chakra burns. She had forced more chakra out of her hands than her skin could take. Neji actually winced in sympathy. Chakra burns hurt worse than anything. That's it, bed for you, Hinata. You've exhausted your chakra, and actually burned your palms. Hiyashi stood up, with Hinata cradled in his arms like she was an infant again. She was just so small, compared to the rest of her family. Just like her mother, Hiyashi smiled secretly. It seemed that Hinata was never going to inherit his height. He stood down the hall towards her room, Hinata sagging in his arms as the rest of the adrenaline leaked out of her muscles, leaving her as limp and weak as a rag doll. Father, where are the guards? She asked suddenly, her head lolling against his chest. None of them came when I screamed. I had to yell Neji's name before anyone woke up. Her voice trailed off as she dropped into an exhausted sleep, right in her father's arms. She hasn't done that since she was a toddler. Hiyashi realized. His daughter had become so stiff and formal around him. If she wasn't suffering from a severe drain on her chakra, she would never had allowed herself to fall asleep in his presence, let alone in his arms, her head resting on his chest. And he would be checking on why the guards were so lax in their duties as soon as possible. Hinata or Hanabi might have been killed. Hiyashi laid his daughter on her bed and drew the covers up to her chin, tucking her in. He ran a hand over her dark hair, smiling fondly. His gentle little Hinata, with her kind heart and shy temperament. It seemed almost cruel that she would be born into the Hyuga family. His gentle little girl had suffered so, the worst of it at his hand. No more, Hiyashi promised himself. Hinata may not be his heir anymore, but she was still his daughter, his little girl, the girl her uncle had died to protect. And now Hiyashi would protect her. He rose to go, but Hinata stirred slightly and opened her eyes, then reached out a hand to him. Please father, stay with me. I know you think I'm weak, but... Her eyes filled with tears suddenly and she turned her face away, letting her hand fall back to the blankets. Never mind, she mumbled into her pillow. I'm sorry. No Hinata, don't be sorry. I don't think you're weak. You were very strong and brave tonight. I'm proud of you. Hiyashi settled himself next to her bed once more, and wiped away his daughter's tears, letting his palm rest on her cheek. I'll stay until you're asleep, okay? Thank you, Hinata whispered, snuggling against her father's touch. She was asleep almost instantly, but Hiyashi lingered by her side, simply watching her sleep and assuring himself that she was okay. She had taken such a risk, using that much chakra, and had done it to protect her sister, the sister who had taken her rightful place as the Hyuga heir, the younger sister who was so much stronger than her according to everyone, according to him. Yet Hinata had rushed to protect her without a second thought, because of the simple fact that Hanabi was her baby sister and she'd wanted to protect her. And now he would do his duty as a father and protect Hinata while she slept. Even if it was just from nightmares. Hinata was almost knocked off her feet as Naruto rushed into Tsunade's outer office, where she was waiting with her father, Neji and Hanabi. Hinata, I just heard about the attack last night. Are you alright? Naruto had his hands on Hinata's shoulders and he stared into her eyes. Why yes Naruto-kun, Hinata managed to say. Are you sure? Naruto's hands slipped down to her hands and he squeezed them comfortingly. Hinata winced before she could stop it, and Naruto narrowed his eyes. Hinata, what did you do to your hands? He took her hands in his and turned them so that he could see her palms, then frowned. Hinata, you told me you were okay. Oh, these are chakra burns Naruto-kun. I got them in the fight. The fight? Hinata fought off 2 attacking ninjas, and defended her little sister. Neji said suddenly. He wasn't blind, he knew about his cousin's crush on the ambitious blonde ninja. He didn't like it, but he approved. Naruto grinned. Really? Hinata, that's great. He pulled her into a hug that almost stopped the poor girl's heart. I'm so proud of you Hinata. TT thank you, Naruto-kun. Hinata whispered, her face red. Naruto released her and she struggled with something to say. Naruto-kun, what are you doing here? Oh, Tsunade sent me a messenger asking me to come to her office. I heard about the attack on my way over here. The messenger who was walking back with me told me you were already here. Tsunade-sama asked you to come here? Hinata asked, confused. Ah, Naruto, I thought I heard your voice. Tsunade said just then, opening the door to the inner office. Come in, all of you. The 5 ninjas entered their leader's office, all of them confused as to why Naruto was there. Hiashi, Hinata and Hanabi took the 3 chairs, while Naruto and Neji stood. Neji at his uncle's side, and Naruto right behind Hinata's chair with his hands on the back of the chair, his fingertips brushing Hinata's back and causing her to blush. Neji was valiantly holding in his laughter, but he hoped Tsunade hurried up so he could go lock himself in a closet somewhere and laugh himself sick. Tsunade looked at all of them seriously. I've asked all of you, especially you Naruto, to tell you something very disturbing to me. As all of you know, the ninja that was captured last night by Neji and Hinata was turned over to the Anbu interrogators. He revealed that they were sent from the land of grass, and that Hinata, and only Hinata, was their target. They were ordered to break off if anyone came to Hinata's defense, and that they could only attack another member of the family if it led to Hinata letting her guard down. Hinata gasped at this, and Naruto frowned. He reached out and gripped Hinata's shoulder. Shush, it's okay, he whispered. Don't worry, we can protect you now that we know. There's more, Tsunade said. It seems that this will not be an isolated incident. The prisoner also informed us that they had someone on the inside of the Hyuga compound, someone who could manipulate the guards' rotations so that they would not be around Hinata's room at any time during the night. Impossible, Neji objected. No Neji, it explains exactly why there were no guards around Hinata's rooms. I personally spoke to the guards myself, and discovered that they themselves were not at fault, but that someone had indeed manipulated their rotations and positions so that Hinata's room would be unguarded. He frowned at Tsunade. So they are going to attack again? We believe so, yes. You believe so? The prisoner managed to kill himself before we could get any more information out of him. Tsunade lifted her gaze to Naruto's blue eyes. And that's where you come in Naruto. I have decided that the safest place for Hinata is away from the Hyuga compound, and someplace that they would never suspect. She would also need a bodyguard that no one would suspect, and you and Hinata are known to be classmates, sometimes teammates, and friends. It is not unusual to see you together in the village. You want Hinata to stay with me. Naruto interrupted, growing irritated with the way Tsunade avoided the point. Tsunade blinked, yet hid a smile. Correct. Now wait a minute. Hiashi burst out. Lady Hokage, I respect your judgment, but I don't think that boy is an appropriate bodyguard. Oh, for Kami's sake Hiashi. Tsunade finally lost her temper. Naruto idly wondered what had taken her so long. That boy, while still officially ranked a genin, is one of the strongest ninjas in the village. The only reason he is still a genin is because he missed the exams in order to do some private training with Jiraiya. That means he's an apprentice of a Sannin. Jiraiya's practically adopted the boy. She scowled at Hiashi, such a frightening sight that everyone in the room cringed. So quite being so high and mighty and realize the Naruto is the best person to keep your daughter alive. Hell, he's probably the only person who can keep Hinata alive right now. So, I'm going to be staying with Naruto-kun? Hinata squeaked. Neji stifled a laugh when he realized his cousin looked like she was going to faint. Naruto rested both hands on Hinata's shoulders and leaned forward to lean over her shoulder. "I'll take care of you, Hinata, I promise," he said. "Besides, it might be fun, having you stay with me." He grinned mischievously, and Hiashi and Hinata almost choked. Neji frowned and swiped at Naruto, who grinned and jumped away. "Hey, come on, Neji. I meant that as innocently as possible. I'm not that much like Jiraiya." Tsunade made a sound that sounded suspiciously like a muffled giggle, and Naruto ducked under another swing from Neji, dropping low and sweeping Neji's feet out from under him. He winked playfully at Hanabi, who was staring at him wide-eyed, then grabbed Hinata's hand and pulled her to her feet. "Come on, Hinata, let's get you some stuff and get you settled in at my place. Naruto, make sure that you're not seen moving Hinata into your house," Tsunade warned. "That would defeat the purpose." I know, Naruto said, waving her off. Hinata was in a daze. Naruto-kun was holding her hand, so she didn't realize it that Naruto was heading for the window, his favorite method of exiting Tsunade's office. He had picked it up from Jiraiya. But come to think of it, it had been the fourth Hokage's favorite way of exiting his office as well. Hinata suddenly realized where Naruto was heading. "Naruto-kun," Hinata protested, digging in her feet. But Naruto seemed to know exactly what she was thinking, because he just scooped her up in his arms and kept going. "Naruto," she wailed, completely eliminating the honorific. "Hinata," he teased, still heading for the window, which Tsunade had left open especially for him. "Don't you dare," she warned, beginning to struggle. Naruto just tightened his grip on her and kept grinning. "Why, Hinata, I don't know what you're referring to," he said. "Naruto, don't you dare take me out that window," Hinata screamed, as Naruto got within 2 steps of the window. "Oh, you mean, like this?" Sprinting the last 2 steps, Naruto was up on the sill and out the window in seconds, and falling toward the back alley. "Naruto ooh," Hinata wailed all the way down. Neji couldn't take it anymore, and Tsunade was a witness to one of the most serious ninjas in the village having a laughing fit, which said of Hanabi. The childish giggles of the young girl were enough to set off Tsunade, and soon even Hiashi was smiling and shaking his head. "Well, maybe that boy is good for her," he admitted. "Naruto, put me down," Hinata ordered in her best Hyuga voice as Naruto sped through the streets of Konoha, with her still in his arms. He just grinned at her and winked. "Oh come on Hinata, this is the fastest way through the village, you know that. Besides, no one can possibly follow us when I'm going this fast. Just relax." Hinata opened her mouth to protest again, then gave up and shut her mouth. Besides, she was in Naruto's arms. She'd have to be crazy to protest. And he was right. This was the fastest way back to her house. Naruto's training with Jiraiya had not only matured the boy and made him stronger, but also much faster. The wind was whipping past so hard that Hinata had to yell to be heard, and it was stinging her face. She finally gave up protesting and just buried her face in Naruto's neck, telling herself it was to protect her face from the wind, and to protect her family's dignity in case someone saw them. It was also to hide her blush. It was most definitely not so that she could feel the warmth from Naruto's skin against her cooled face, or to smell that smoky, woodsy smell that was completely different from anything she had ever smelled before, and yet was completely Naruto. Naruto smiled when he felt Hinata hid her face against his neck. Her skin felt slightly cold against his, but quickly warmed up, and the feeling of her breath on his neck had him suppressing a shiver. To tell the truth, he was glad she had stopped protesting, because he liked having her in his arms. She wasn't heavy at all, and when she curled up against him she seemed to fit his arms, like they were 2 parts of a puzzle that had suddenly been snapped together. Naruto was suddenly glad that Tsunade had chosen him to protect Hinata. He wanted to keep her safe, Wanted to make sure that no one with violent intentions ever laid eyes on her, let alone touched her. He turned his head to touch his lips to her hair, as lightly as a butterfly's wings. "Don't worry, Hinata," he swore silently. "I'll protect you. I won't let anyone hurt you, I promise." "Well, here we are," Naruto said as he opened the door to his apartment and motioned for Hinata to go in ahead of him. "It's small and kind of a mess, but it's home." Hinata stepped into the apartment and instantly fell in love with the place. "It's so cute," she giggled. "Cute?" Naruto tried to look indignant, but couldn't quite pull it off, not with Hinata smiling at him. "My home is not cute." But just to make sure, he glanced around his living room. He didn't think it was cute. The walls were a warm yellow that almost perfectly matched his hair. Jiraiya had once joked that when Naruto stood in front of the wall he looked bald. The carpet and furniture was a dark blue that hid the dirt and blood that Naruto often tracked in. The walls of the kitchen were white, while the tile floor was the same dark blue as the carpet in the living room. It wasn't cute, it was functional. He liked yellow, it was a happy color. "Well, I think it's very cute, Naruto-kun," Hinata insisted, smiling at him. Naruto tried to glare at her, only to have his eyes pop open wide in surprise as he realized something. "Hinata, you're teasing me." Naruto whooped in delight and threw an arm around Hinata's shoulders. She kept grinning, even as she blushed. She had been teasing Naruto, of course, even if she really did think his home was cute. It suited him though, happy yet functional and practical at the same time. "Well, anyway, this is the living room and kitchen, of course." Naruto dropped his arm from Hinata's shoulders, but gripped her wrist and pulled her along behind him. "The bathroom is through here." He pushed open the door so she could see the tiny but clean room, done in dark green and dark blue. "And then my room, which is where you will be sleeping, is right through here." He pushed open the door to the last room in the apartment so she could see the almost Spartan, yet comfortable bedroom with its plain white walls and dark wooden furniture. She could see several framed pictures on top of Naruto's dresser. One was of Naruto with Sakura, Sasuke and Kakashi, and another was of Naruto and Jiraiya, both making faces at the camera, while Tsunade rolled her eyes in the background. And she blushed when she realized that the third picture was of Naruto and her, standing at the training ground. It had only been taken a few weeks ago, when Naruto had dropped in on Hinata suddenly to show her a new weapon he had just bought. He was so excited about it that Hinata had had to admire it. Sakura had showed up then and yelled at Hinata and Naruto to pose for a picture. Naruto had instantly grinned and put an arm around Hinata's shoulders, pulling her closer. They had both smiled for Sakura, even though Hinata had been blushing. Sakura must have given Naruto a copy of the picture. There was only one picture on the walls, and that was a picture of the fourth Hokage. Hinata smiled at that. It made sense, given that the fourth Hokage was Naruto's hero. The bed was a little messed up, but was large and comfortable, with soft blankets and pillows. Her face burned as she finally processed Naruto's words. "NN Naruto-kun. I can't SSS sleep I in YYY your bed." She stammered, wanting to kick herself. She had stammered this badly while talking to Naruto in years. Naruto, however, just smiled at her. "You know, Hinata, all that blood rushing to your face can't be good for you." His grin let her know he was teasing, and he reached out and pushed a strand of her hair back behind her ear, his cool fingertips brushing her cheek. "It's all right, really. I've got my sleeping bag stuffed away somewhere. You take the bed, and I'll sleep right outside in the hallway, just in case." "NNN Naruto-kun. Shush, Hinata." Naruto reached up and touched her lips, silencing her. He chuckled at the look on her face. "There's that blush again. Listen, Hinata, you're not going to talk me out of this. I want you to have the bed. Really, I insist. You're the guest, so you should take the bed. I'll be fine out in the hallway. If you're SSS sure." Hinata trailed off when Naruto grinned and ruffled her hair gently. "I'm sure, Hinata." He smiled at her and reached down to wrap his fingers around her wrist, avoiding her injured hands, which Hinata had covered with a pair of soft gloves. "Now come on. I know I've got some of your favorite ramen around here. Let's get something to eat, and then we can get you settled in." He smiled at her and his free hand reached up to cup her cheek gently, that one touch managing to convey such strength and friendship that Hinata felt her heart skip. Okay, Hinata whispered, smiling back at Naruto as her blush faded. "Great. Naruto pulled Hinata out of the bedroom by her wrist, causing her to laugh at his sheer abundance of energy. In the kitchen, Naruto insisted that Hinata sit at the table while he prepared the instant ramen. It's not rocket science, Hinata. Hot water plus ramen equals dinner. I'm perfectly capable of doing it myself, been doing it for years. Besides, you're the guest. He grinned as he gripped her shoulders and turned her around, then pushed her gently towards a chair. Sit down, Hinata. Naruto set the water to heat for 3 minutes, and then lifted himself up on the counter to wait. Hinata smiled to herself, remembering their academy days, when Naruto said that he hated waiting for the water to heat. Now, he was calm and relaxed as he sat on the counter and studied her. Her small smile caught his attention. Where are you, Hinata? He asked softly. She blinked as she came back into the present and smiled at him. Just remembering when we were in the academy. Do you remember? When you said that you hated to wait for the water to heat for your instant ramen? Naruto laughed at the memory. Yeah, I remember that. Then Jiraiya had me look at it in a different way. Oh? Yeah, he told me to look at it like my spheres. If I get impatient and put too much chakra and power into it, it explodes in my face. The chakra has to be put in evenly for the sphere to work correctly. If I want my ramen to taste good, then I have to take the care and patience to do everything right. It's kind of like life when you really think about it. He shook his head, suddenly realizing how grown up that sounded. Whoa, okay, that was a little mature. Hinata laughed at the randomness of the comment. I like it, Naruto. Mature works for you. Oh yeah? Naruto tilted his head and narrowed his eyes. Hinata shook her head at him. No, don't look at me like that. I like you when you're happy too, and when you grin at me, and when you tease me. But your new mature attitude fits you well, that's all. You've grown up, Naruto, that's all. It's nothing to be ashamed of. We all grow up. He was looking at her wide-eyed now. She met his gaze, a little nervously. Naruto blinked a few times, very slowly, then grinned, so suddenly that it was like dawn breaking after a storm. You're right about that, Hinata. I have grown up. Everybody does. He winked at her mischievously. You've definitely done some growing up of your own, Hinata. He turned to check on the water, leaving Hinata to blush so furiously she didn't think she'd ever stop. They had just finished eating when Naruto's head shot up. He sniffed at the breeze that drifted through the open window and ruffled the spikes on his head. He tilted his head, his eyes screwed up in concentration. Naruto? What is it? Hinata asked. Naruto shook himself and grinned at her. It's going to storm. Soon. What? But it's been so nice all day. She got up and walked over to look out the window, and sure enough, there were black storm clouds on the horizon, even though the skies had been clear all day. Wow, that's building fast. It'll be here soon. Naruto frowned as he leaned past Hinata to shut the window. She jumped, not realizing that he had moved. When he wanted to, Naruto was as quiet as a shadow. Now that she knew he was there, she could feel his chakra brushing up against hers, as subtle and gentle as a caress. But she hadn't felt him there before he announced himself. That was a little frightening and amazingly powerful. Naruto? She asked quietly. He was distracted, looking out the window at the storm clouds rolling towards them. Did Jiraiya-sama teach you how to suppress your chakra? What? The question caught him off guard and he looked down at her. Just now, when you came up behind me. You scared me because I couldn't feel your chakra. Usually, when someone is near me, I can feel my chakra acknowledge theirs, pushing against it. If the chakra is familiar, then my chakra just touches it, brushes up against it, telling me who it is. But you, before you let me know you were there, I couldn't feel anything. Oh, Naruto let out a laugh, and suddenly his familiar chakra rolled over her, wrapping her up so warm and safe it was like a soft receiving blanket wrapped around a newborn for the first time. Sorry about that, Hinata. Yeah, Jiraiya taught me how to do that. He said that it would be useful because there were people who could sense chakra. I didn't know you were one of them, or I would have let my chakra loose. I just suppress it when I'm concentrating or thinking about something. Most people don't realize that their chakra can sense other chakras, so if I'm suppressing mine and I'm quiet, they can't see me. Their eyes can look right at me, but because I'm not putting out chakra, they don't acknowledge me. It's kind of like being invisible. He reached down and touched her wrist, the feel of his fingers, calloused from his ninja work and training, soft and familiar. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to startle you. It's okay, I just barely began sensing other chakras with mine. I've had Kiba pouting for 3 days because he can't sneak up on my anymore, and he doesn't know why. You didn't tell him? No, I'd never even heard of anyone being able to do this until I started doing some research on it. I didn't want to say anything to anyone before I knew exactly what I was doing. You're the only one I've told, the only one who's even heard of being able to do this. She smiled shyly up at him. You're also the only one I know who can suppress your chakra. Jiraiya can do it, Naruto said with a grin. He really only taught me how to do it, because I was confused on how he was able to get close enough to peep at girls, and have some of them actually look at him, without getting caught. I threatened to loudly expose him every chance I got if he didn't teach me how he was doing it. My reasons for wanting to learn it are a little more moral than his though. He laughed at the bright red shade Hinata had turned when he mentioned Jiraiya's research, and he touched her cheek adoringly. There's that blush again. Really, Hinata, if you're going to be hanging out with me for the foreseeable future, you're going to have to control that. Jiraiya is always popping in and dragging me off somewhere, and that man has no shame. He always gleefully tells me all about his research, even when I don't care, and is always bouncing plot ideas off of me, which basically has now made me Kakashi-sensei's new best friend. If he finds out how easily you blush, there will be no end to the amusement he'll get out of it. He'll tease you mercilessly, and either you'll stop blushing so much, or I'll get annoyed and knock him around. He laughed because Hinata's blush had only intensified, and mercifully changed the subject. Come on, we got to get all my windows closed before it rains. He frowned at that. Man, I hate when it rains. I have to close all the windows and then I get all restless because I'm all closed in. Are you claustrophobic? No, Naruto protested, a little too quickly. I just don't like being holed up inside without fresh air on my face, that's all. I hate to break it to you, Naruto, but that means you're claustrophobic. No, it doesn't. Hinata laughed softly when Naruto protested, then pouted. His pout was endearing. She gathered up her courage and patted his cheek. Keep telling yourself that. Another question popped into her mind. Naruto, how did you know it was going to rain? Naruto's jerked away from her and backed up, putting distance between them. Hinata was startled at his almost violent overreaction and blinked rapidly. She was also shocked to see something close to fear in his eyes as he stared at her. All the color had drained out of his face, causing his huge blue eyes and the strange whisker-like marks on his face to stand out in ghastly contrast. Naruto, what's wrong? The rain thing. I. He stuttered and then trailed off, and his eyes darted around, almost like he expected to be attacked and wanted to know which direction he should escape in. Is it something you learned from Jiraiya? Hinata asked softly. Instinctively, she knew that Naruto wouldn't have reacted like that if the answer was as simple as a talent he had learned from Jiraiya. But she cared about Naruto, and seeing him like this, as terrified as a cornered animal, was tearing at her heart. So she gave him an out. Yes, Naruto burst out quickly, so quickly in fact that her suspicions were confirmed. I learned it from Jiraiya. Well, it's useful, Hinata said, seeming to dismiss it. Come on now, those clouds are getting closer. We better get those windows closed. Right, Naruto grinned at her, the color already back in his face. The windows. Naruto's apartment had a lot of windows. Hinata counted 5 in the living room alone, plus 3 in the kitchen, 2 in the bathrooms, which she couldn't understand, even if they were of frosted glass, and 2 more in his bedroom. Naruto-kun, you have more windows than rooms, she said, frowning as she realized that the last window, one of the ones in the living room, had been opened so wide that she was too short to grab the sill and pull it back down. She stretched, but she just couldn't reach. Naruto came into the living room from shutting the windows in the bathroom and laughed at the sight. Easy there, Hinata. If you fall out the window, I'm going to need a bodyguard, cause your dad and Neji would skin my alive. He grabbed her around the waist and pulled her back. I'll get that one. They both froze, his arms still around her waist as a flash of lightning and a loud boom of thunder split the sky, and the rain began to fall. Naruto, hurry, close the window. It's going to get cold in here, Hinata said with a shiver. The shiver was more from Naruto's arms still being around her waist than the breeze blowing through the window. Right, Naruto hurried to close the window, but stopped to look out at the rain. Then, with the window still open, he turned to her, a mischievous gleam in his eyes. Tell me, Hinata, have you ever gone out and played in the rain? What? No, father would have found it unseemly. I used to watch Kiba, Shino, Shikamaru and Choji run around in the rain though. Why? Suddenly recognizing the look in Naruto's eyes, and the open window, her own eyes went wide and her jaw dropped as she started scrambling backwards away from Naruto. Oh no. Naruto, don't even think about it. Don't even think about what? Naruto asked innocently, although the growing grin wiped any innocence from the statement. He began moving toward her, his movements more like stalking than anything. I'm not thinking about anything. Yes you are. Hinata kept out of his reach. I can see exactly what you're thinking. Okay then. Dropping all attempts at innocence, Naruto jumped forward, wrapped an arm around Hinata's waist before she could do anything to stop him, then scooped her up and ran for the window. Naruto. She shrieked. It was all she could do. His grip on her wasn't hurting her, but she knew she'd never be able to break it. And if she was honest with herself, she didn't particularly want to break his grip. It'll be fun, Hinata. How could you never have played in the rain? Naruto scolded teasingly. Then he was jumping out the window into the street just 2 stories below. Hinata let out a tiny scream and wrapped her arms around his neck. Naruto just laughed as he used his chakra to cushion his fall, and landed safely on the street. He set her down on the ground, but had to laugh when he had to grab her waist to steady her. Hinata turned and punched his shoulder with her tiny fist. Naruto, why are you always taking me out of windows? The words were whining, but she was smiling at him. I like going out windows. Naruto protested. It's quick and easy and most people don't expect it. Hinata blinked and then smiled at Naruto. Well, I guess it is useful for keeping people off guard. She conceded. But why do you always have to go out them with me? She mock-whined. Naruto laughed and shrugged her question off. Why not? Then he grabbed her wrist and pulled her with him as he took off at a run, sprinting through the rain. Hinata had to laugh at his energy, and she followed him. Naruto stood in the middle of the deserted street, and spread his arms out wide as he spun around in a circle, head back and eyes closed. The rain soaked his hair, and Hinata grinned at the picture he made. Naruto stopped spinning and held out his hand to Hinata, grinning at her through his hair, which was falling into his eyes now that it was soaking wet. She held out her hand to him, and he grabbed her wrist, still mindful of the chakra burns on her hands. Hinata felt her heart swell at that small consideration. Naruto was always so considerate of her, even if it was just small things like touching her wrist because he remembered that she had hurt her hands. Naruto pulled her close, out there in the rain, and touched her chin, tilting her head back so that she could feel the rain on her face. She closed her eyes and shivered a little at the first touch of the cold water, then grew used to the temperature. Open your eyes, Naruto whispered. Hinata obeyed him and grinned suddenly, loving the way the rain looked when she looked straight up, and could see it falling toward her. See what you miss when you look at the ground all the time? Naruto whispered in her ear, his breath warm on her skin. She blushed but smiled at him. I didn't know what I was missing, until you showed me. She whispered back, causing Naruto to grin at her and pull her into a loose, friendly hug. He pulled back after a few seconds, still smiling, then took her wrists and stepped back. He started spinning around, drawing Hinata with him until the world was whirling around them, and Hinata had to throw back her head and laugh. It was so exhilarating. Naruto laughed with her, and their laughter echoed through the deserted street. They eventually slowed to a stop, and Hinata stumbled a little, dizzy. Naruto jumped forward and caught her against his chest. His soft laughter rumbled through his chest. Careful there, Hinata, he whispered, smiling down at her. Hinata smiled up at him, and, without thinking, reached up to run her fingers over the marks on his cheeks. To her surprise, there was no indentation in the skin, or anything raised up, just the marks. She locked eyes with him, and she suddenly couldn't breathe. She felt like she was drowning in those pools of bright blue. Her hands stilled on his face and her face became very still and serious. Naruto also felt the seriousness in the air between them and he allowed his playful grin to fade as he gazed into her light violet eyes. Not quite as dark and mysterious as the twilight storm clouds above them, but more like the color of storm clouds with the sun behind them, right before a storm ended. Hinata seemed to be almost in a trance as she rose up on tiptoe toward him and he lowered his head to meet her. Naruto's heart was pounding and he felt almost light-headed as he and Hinata drew closer together. Their lips had almost touched when there was a flash of lightning and a huge crash of thunder right overhead and they both jumped apart like they had been burned. Hinata bit her lip and looked up at Naruto, seeming embarrassed by what had almost happened. Naruto smiled, also embarrassed, yet he reached out and touched her cheek very lightly and briefly. Hinata grinned at him, relived, then Naruto reached down and circled her wrist with his fingers very gently. He pulled her into another hug, rubbing her back in soothing circles, and then pulled back. He raised his eyebrows at her and jerked a thumb upward. "Going up?" he asked. Hinata nodded, biting her lip harder and not meeting his eyes. Naruto stepped close and wrapped one arm tightly around her waist, holding her against his chest. She realized exactly what he was going to do, and gripped his shoulders tightly as she closed her eyes. Using his amazing strength and chakra, he jumped up, and grabbed the ledge just above his open window, then swung them both inside. When they were back in Naruto's apartment, he closed the window, then shook his blonde head, sending sheets of water everywhere. Hinata shrieked with laughter as she backed up and put her hands in front of her. "Naruto," she protested, laughing. He stopped and winked teasingly at her. "Sorry, couldn't resist," he admitted. Hinata rolled her eyes but was smiling. "If you want to take the shower first, I can get you some warm clothes," Naruto offered. "I noticed when you were packing that you packed mostly your ninja outfits. I have a t-shirt and some old pants you can borrow. They'll be warmer than your ninja stuff." "Thank you, Naruto-kun," Hinata said, realizing just then that she had mostly eliminated the honorific from his name when she was talking to him. Naruto had obviously noticed too, because he shook his finger at her in a teasing way. "Come on, Hinata, I think we're a little past honorifics. After all, we're friends, right?" "Right," Hinata said with another shy smile. "Great." Naruto moved past her and opened a small hall closet. "Here's a towel." He handed her a fluffy yellow towel and raised an eyebrow. "Don't even think about calling my towels cute," he mock-threatened. Hinata burst out laughing. There was nothing else she could do. Hinata showered quickly, so that there would be enough hot water for Naruto. She stepped out and wrapped the large towel around herself snugly, jumping slightly when the lightning flashed and thunder boomed again just outside the window. "Hinata?" Naruto asked, knocking on the door. "I got those clothes for you." "Thank you, Naruto," she called back. "I'll just leave them right out here, okay?" "Okay." She heard him said something outside the door and walk away. She opened the door and picked up the clothes, then retreated back into the bathroom. Naruto had left her a pair of old orange and black pants and a white t-shirt. Hinata pulled on the t-shirt, which was so huge on her that it fell to almost her knees, and the pants only fit after she rolled up the pant legs and rolled down the waistband. She stepped out of the bathroom and walked into the living room to find Naruto. He was standing in the front of one of the windows with no shirt on, and the lights down low, a towel around his shoulders, watching the storm. "Naruto?" Hinata called softly. He looked over his shoulder at her and grinned. Hinata couldn't help it, she had to smile back. Naruto's heart almost stopped when he saw her standing there in his clothes, which were so oversized on her that they made her seem even smaller and fragile, and she was barefoot, which just made her seem younger than 16. "I made sure to save you some hot water," Hinata said, giving him a small smile. "Thanks." Naruto turned from the window and walked past Hinata to the bathroom, his shoulder brushing against hers, even though there was plenty of room in the doorway. She blushed and jumped away from the contact, feeling like an electric spark that just traveled from the top of her head to the tip of her toes. Naruto grinned mischievously at her reaction and grinned over his shoulder at her. "Your hair smells nice, Hinata," he told her, laughing in delight at the red blush that covered her face. "Relax, Hinata. The blush is really cute, but I've got to get you to stop blushing before Jiraiya gets a hold of you." He disappeared into the bathroom, and Hinata collapsed on his couch, drawing her knees up to her chest and hiding her face. To tell the truth, Naruto was the only one who really made her blush anymore. She just couldn't control herself around him. Her heart always seemed to be trying to escape out her mouth, or trying to beat its way out of her chest. All he had to do was smile at her and she instantly felt light-headed and unsure of herself. Naruto was so handsome and sweet, she couldn't understand why no other girls were after him. His grin was infectious, and had a way of making you feel like he was smiling only at you, for you. He was lean, yet muscular, and his blonde hair was so often tousled that it was endearing, because your fingers just itched to reach up and smooth it out, like you would with a rambunctious little boy. His blue eyes could freeze an enemy with an intense stare, but they could also twinkle mischievously, and give you such a gentle look that you knew he had a good heart buried beneath his prankster facade. He had grown up when he was gone with Jiraiya, growing taller and growing into his body. His face and eyes were in better proportion to the whisker-like marks on his face, so that the marks no longer took up most of his face, but were further back on his cheeks. If you didn't know he had had those marks for all of his life, you might almost think they were scars, from some training accident or other. He was such a kind and loyal person, that Hinata couldn't figure out why she was the only one who seemed to have any interest in spending time with him. Most of their graduating class considered Naruto a friend, but when it came right down to it, Naruto spent a lot of time alone with Hinata, because everyone else would drift away with their other friends, the friends that they had had since childhood. Naruto didn't have anyone like that, now that Sasuke was gone and Sakura spent most of her time training under Tsunade with Ino. Hinata hadn't had any real friends growing up, and even if she did have Kiba and Shino now, they were easily irritated by Naruto's constant energy and motion. She found Naruto's energy and motion enjoyable and liked being around him, because around him, it didn't matter how shy or weak she was. He talked enough for both of them, without making her feel excluded, and he was strong enough for both of them too, but never made her feel weak. His faith and belief in her was what pushed her to develop her own technique and her own strength. It was because of him that she had even developed the chakra shield and wall that she had used to defend her younger sister. It was because of him that Hinata was even alive. Before she met Naruto, she would have been paralyzed by fear when pinned to a wall by a large man holding a knife on her. But the thought of Naruto had given her an inner strength she didn't know she had. Naruto had given her so much without even realizing it, and the only thing she could offer him in return was friendship. And love. But she had probably ruined everything, out there in the rain when she had forgot herself, gotten caught up in the moment and tried to kiss him. Feeling lost and alone and weak for the first time in months, and sure that she was about to get her heart broken, Hinata began to cry. Naruto stood under the hot spray in his shower, scrubbing at his body and swearing at himself. "Idiot, what did you think you were doing, trying to kiss her like that? She's your friend, and a Hyuga besides. She's too good for you. You moron, you've probably scared her off for good now, if how you reacted in the kitchen hasn't done it already." Naruto rapped his head sharply against the tile wall of his shower, then sighed and shut off the water. He climbed out, dried himself off, then dressed in much the same way Hinata was. A white t-shirt and an old pair of his black and orange training pants. Even if he had ruined his friendship with Hinata by getting caught up in the moment and how beautiful she had looked out there and all the feelings that had been swimming in his heart for 2 years, he still had a job to do. There were still assassins after Hinata, and he had to protect her. He could worry about his mangled friendship with her later, after she was safe. Her safety and happiness was all that mattered to him, all that would ever matter to him. She was a precious person, and he would die to protect her, to make her happy. To see her smile and to hear her laugh, even if it wasn't directed at him. After all, how could it ever be directed at him? He was the demon child, the fox, the abomination, the constant reminder of all those who had died to stop the thing inside of him. Naruto's lips curled into a smile that no one who knew him would recognize. This smile was bitter and full of pain, but had a tiny bit of hope. The hope was only there because Naruto knew that if Jiraiya ever knew he was thinking like that again, he would be at Naruto's side in a second, coaxing him out of this depression like he had coaxed Naruto out of countless nightmares and bouts of depression when Naruto had lived with him in seclusion for 2 years. Naruto didn't get depressed often, but it did happen. Countless years of being ignored, expect to be yelled at or punished. Years of fighting to keep a smile on his face when all he wanted to do was cry and have somebody hold him while he did so, would take its toll on anyone. The toll it took on Naruto was nightmares and occasional bouts of depression and self-pity. Naruto shook his head as he stepped out of the bathroom, vigorously towel drying his unruly blonde locks. It was interesting though, that when Hinata was the last person he saw or thought about, the nightmares and the depression tended to stay away. But now the thought of losing her was allowing the depression to rear its ugly head. Naruto made his way to the living room where he had left Hinata, and the sight he found forced thoughts of his own depression right out of his head. Hinata was curled up on his couch, her legs drawn up against her chest and her forehead resting on her knees. And she was crying. Naruto dropped his towel on the floor and was by her side in a second, putting his arms around her and trying to comfort her as best he could. But he wasn't sure what to do, having never been comforted himself. So he just wrapped his arms around her and let her cry. Hinata uncurled herself as soon as he did, and tried to pull away and hide her tears. "Shush," Naruto whispered. "It's okay to cry, Hinata. Let it out. I'm here for you. You can cry, I don't mind." Unable to hide or stop her tears anyway, Hinata allowed Naruto to pull her up against his chest and she leaned against him as she cried, borrowing his strength, which he was glad to share with her. She wasn't sure how long they stayed like that, Naruto holding her and rocking her gently while he whispered nonsense words into her hair. His words didn't matter, just the tone, the familiar and soothing sound of his voice as he tried to comfort her, something he had never received but that he was now trying to give her when she needed it most. Eventually, her tears dried up, leaving her feeling empty and wrung out. Her eyes felt sore and gritty, and she was sure she was a mess. She ducked her head and tried to pull away from Naruto, but he refused to let her go that easily. Instead, he only let her draw back enough so that he could cup her chin in one hand and gently but insistently forced her head up to look him in the eye. "Hey," he whispered, giving her a small, private smile. "Hey," she whispered back, smiling back, almost against her will. "What's with the tears?" Naruto asked, wiping away some of the lingering tears from her cheeks before they could dry. Hinata didn't want to admit anything, wanted to try and protect what was left of her heart, but she couldn't, not with Naruto looking down at her with those big blue eyes. "Oh Naruto," she whimpered. "I'm sorry." "For what, Hinata?" he asked, his eyes opening wide in surprise and shock. "Hinata, you haven't done anything you need to be sorry for." But oh Naruto, I ruined everything." She burst out, feeling the tears building again. "I got caught up in the moment, and I almost kissed you and now you probably hate me and. She trailed off, and Naruto felt his heart melt at her obvious misery. "Oh Hinata." Naruto pulled her close again, right up against his chest and into his lap. "Hinata, you have nothing to be sorry for. We've been friends for years now, and nothing could ever change that, I promise." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head, where it was snuggled against his chest, right over his heart. "And don't worry about the kiss." He felt her tense in his arms, and took the plunge. "If it's meant to happen, it will happen eventually. Don't worry about it, Naruto." Hinata gasped. She pulled back from his chest and looked up at him. He was smiling, but his eyes were nervous and unsure. As nervous and unsure as she felt. Her heartbeat sped up as the full meaning of his words kicked in. Could it be that he felt the same way about her that she felt about him? If he did, then. "You're right, Naruto." She gave him the best smile she could manage right then. "If it's going to happen, it will happen. That's my girl," Naruto said proudly, resting his forehead against hers briefly. He pulled back and brushed his lips across her forehead, then smiled down at her as he stood up and pulled her off the couch. "Well, I don't know about you, but I could use some sleep," he said. "I'm tired too," Hinata said, surprised to find that she was tired. "Well, let's get some sleep then." Naruto led her to the bedroom, and Hinata climbed into his bed with a blush as Naruto dug under his bed for his sleeping bag. He walked out into the hallway and spread it out, then returned for a pillow and smiled at her, already burrowed under his covers, looking for all the world like a tiny little girl. He couldn't help it, he reached out and ran a hand over her hair, then pulled the blanket up around her shoulders. "You good?" he asked. Hinata nodded. "Yeah." Hinata yawned suddenly, and then smiled sheepishly at Naruto. "Good." Naruto turned and walked to the door. "Good night, Hinata." "Good night, Naruto," Hinata said. He shut off the light, then left, shutting the door behind him. And Hinata was left alone, in the dark, with the nightmares just waiting to pounce. It was dark and Hinata couldn't see anything. Even activating her Byakugan didn't help, she still couldn't see anything. That scared her more than anything. Heir or not, weak or not, she is a Hyuga and had been born with the Byakugan. Learning to use it had been as big a part of her childhood as learning to walk and talk. Without the Byakugan, Hinata felt exposed and vulnerable. She shivered and suddenly felt something warm and wet on her cheeks. She reached up to touch it, but of course, still couldn't see. But a familiar scent made its way to her nose, a faintly metallic smell. Hinata began to scream as she realized that she couldn't see because her eyes were gone and blood was pouring out of her empty eye sockets. Naruto burst into the bedroom as another scream ripped out of Hinata's throat. The first scream had awoken him, causing him to sit bolt upright in his sleeping bag in the hallway. The second scream had sent him scrambling out of his sleeping bag. He hit the door to his bedroom at a dead run, bursting into the room. He saw Hinata, thrashing about on the bed, still screaming. His heart almost broke when he realized that she was trapped in a nightmare. Hinata. Naruto scrambled up on the bed and wrapped his arms around her. Hinata. Wake up, Hinata, you're safe. She continued to trash and fight against his grip, her screams now mixed with heartbreaking sobs. Naruto tried to hold on, but was afraid that if he held on too tightly, that she would hurt herself trying to get away. Remembering what Jiraiya had done, more than one when he had a nightmare, Naruto snagged one of the blankets that Hinata had kicked off and wrapped it around her tightly, almost like she was a baby. She still struggled, but now she was wrapped in the blankets, so her struggles has less strength. Naruto gathered her up against his chest and cradled her close. Hinata, wake up, I'm here, I'm here. Hinata's eyes finally snapped open and she called out Naruto's name with a sob. Shish, Hinata, I'm here. Naruto whispered. Hinata freed her arms from the blanket and wrapped them around his neck. Naruto, she whimpered, hiding her face in his neck. Shish, I got you. I'm here, you're safe. Naruto ran his hand up and down Hinata's back soothingly. Shish, it's okay. Hinata burst into tears and clung to Naruto like a lifeline. Naruto wrapped her in a tight hug and whispered nonsense world into her hair in a soothing tone. The words didn't need to make sense, only the sound and the tone of his voice mattered. Hinata's tears finally ran their course, and she sagged limply against him, exhausted. Naruto brushed his lips against her forehead in a gentle kiss to get her attention. When she looked up at him, he gave her a gently smile. You okay now? He asked. I've been better, Hinata admitted, but I'm okay. She laid her head on Naruto's chest and sighed. That was quite a nightmare. Naruto whispered, running his fingers through her hair. Hinata closed her eyes and pressed closer to Naruto's chest as she nodded. Yeah, you want to tell me about it? Not really. She shivered, and Naruto tightened his grip and rubbed her arms. It was too horrible. Okay. Naruto held her close. That's okay. I haven't had a nightmare in a long time. Hinata whispered, her head still resting on Naruto's chest. The sound of his heartbeat soothed and comforted her. She slowly allowed her muscles to relax. Naruto lifted one of his hands to the back of her head and cradled her against him. Hinata, after last night you are more than entitled to a nightmare. He ran his other hand through her long hair, almost absent-mindedly. And you're safe here with me. You know that, right? Of course I do. The warmth of Naruto's arms, the sound of his heart under her ear and the feeling of Naruto running his fingers through her hair were making Hinata very sleepy. She yawned, and allowed herself to snuggle closer to Naruto as her eyelids drooped. You should go to sleep. Naruto whispered, resting his chin on top of her head. No, Hinata protested, even as she yawned, and her eyes closed briefly before she forced them back open. Naruto smiled. She was so cute, protesting like a little girl defying her bedtime even as she fought of sleep. Hinata, you're exhausted, he countered gently. So? Hinata actually pouted as she sleepily nuzzled against his chest, removing her arms from around his neck and wrapping them around his waist. This is nice. She mumbled, her voice thick with suppressed sleep. Nice and warm. She yawned and rubbed a hand across her eyes, a move so cute that Naruto only barely restrained from letting out a very unmanly, "Ah." I'm safe with you, Naruto. Safe and warm, Hinata whispered. Of course you are, Naruto assured her. Stay with me? Hinata, I'm not going anywhere. Naruto told her. Just get some rest. I'll be right outside. No, Hinata protested, tightening her grip. Surprised, Naruto rested his hands on Hinata's shoulders and was shocked when he felt her shaking. His heart went out to her. She was absolutely terrified. That nightmare must have been really bad. Okay, Hinata, he said soothingly. Okay. Shifting himself around, Naruto lay back against the pillows, with Hinata still against his chest. I'll stay with you. Groping around, Naruto grabbed his sheet and blankets and pulled them back up over them. Really? Hinata whispered. Yeah, don't worry, I won't leave you. Thank you, Naruto. Hinata whispered, already falling asleep. Shush, sleep now, he whispered, kissing the top of Hinata's head. I promise to protect you and I will. In moments, both of them were fast asleep, cuddled comfortably in each other's arms. Jiraiya entered the Leaf Village silently and secretly, wandering the streets aimlessly, his head tilted back to take in the stars in the night sky. Some instinct had told him that he needed to check on Naruto. He didn't know why, but he cared deeply about Naruto as a surrogate son and as a student, so he followed the instinct that told him to look in on him. Jiraiya's aimless wanderings finally took him to Naruto's apartment, which was dark and quiet this late. The Sannin jumped up and grabbed the ledge of Naruto's bedroom window. Jiraiya pulled himself up, intending to peer in and simply check on Naruto, reassure himself that the kid wasn't having a nightmare or suffering from insomnia. Jiraiya firmly silenced the inner voice that told him he was acting like a nervous father. But when Jiraiya peeked in Naruto's window, he simply grinned and shook his head. Naruto was sound asleep, curled up among his mound of blankets and pillows, his spiky blonde hair spread out on his pillow. But he wasn't alone. Cradled protectively in Naruto's arms, her head pillowed on Naruto's chest, was the young Hyuga former heiress, Hinata. She was also fast asleep. Belatedly, Jiraiya remembered a rumor he had heard about a failed attack on the young Hyuga. It seemed that Hinata now had a protector. If those grass nins tried to attack Hinata while she was with Naruto, underestimating the blonde ninja like so many did, they would be making the worst mistake of their lives. A mistake they might not live to regret. Of course, this whole thing also gave Jiraiya a new idea for a plotline. Thanks Naruto. Jiraiya crackled as he sped off into the night. Sometime before morning, Naruto woke up. Without opening his eyes, he could tell that Hinata was staring at him. "Hinata, I can't sleep with you staring at me," he whispered teasingly, opening his bright blue eyes and surprising Hinata. She blushed, even as she smiled at his teasing. "Naruto-kun, I didn't wake you up by staring at you," she countered, also whispering. She didn't know why she was whispering, the pre-dawn silence just seemed to require it. "Yes, you did," Naruto insisted, still teasing her. He reached out and tucked her hair back behind her ears. They were still in the position they had fallen asleep in. Naruto on his back, with Hinata on top of his chest. But now Hinata moved to lie next to him. She curled up on her side, still looking at Naruto. Intrigued by her sudden interest in his face, when she usually couldn't maintain eye contact, Naruto turned on his side to face her. "What's on your mind, Hinata?" he asked seriously, choosing not to tease her about sticking an honorific back on his name. "You stayed." Hinata reached out and brushed back some of Naruto's wild hair, which had fallen forward when he had removed his headband to go to bed. "You asked me to," Naruto said, basking in the feeling of Hinata's fingers in his hair. Usually, he hated having anyone try to straighten his hair, preferring the wild spikes. But having Hinata fuss over his hair, pushing it back from his face, felt right. "You needed me to stay. So, I stayed. Thank you." Hinata's eyes filled up with tears at Naruto's words. "Hinata, what's wrong?" Naruto asked, reaching out to cup her cheek and caught a tear on the end of his thumb. "Sorry Naruto," Hinata whispered. "It's just." She trailed off and bit her lip. Naruto chuckled and used his thumb to gently free her lip from her teeth. He then ran his thumb over her lower lip, making her blush. "Just what?" he prompted. Hinata put her hand over his, holding his calloused hand to her cheek and drew strength from it. "When my mother died, I had lots of nightmares. But no one ever came to me when I cried out during the night. And nobody ever stayed with me to keep the nightmares away. Well, my father did, once." "When?" Naruto asked, keeping his eyes on Hinata, urging her to keep talking. "After the attack, when I passed out form using too much chakra. My father carried me back to my room and stayed with me." She smiled shyly, her eyes shining. "That was the first time he called me strong and brave. He said he was proud of me." "About time," Naruto muttered. At Hinata's amazed look, he couldn't resist leaning forward and rubbing his nose against hers. "Hinata, when you stood up to Negi during the first Chunin exams, I was so proud of you. He obviously terrified you, but you didn't quit. Every time he knocked you down, you stood right back up and kept fighting. You refused to give up and I thought you were so brave." Naruto moved his fingers, just a little, stroking Hinata's skin. "And he's just now admitting that you're strong? Hinata, I knew you were amazingly strong during our mission, to get that bug, and you took out 3 Junins by yourself." Naruto pulled back to kiss Hinata's nose, watching it wrinkle in surprise, then relaxed back a little so he could watch her face. Hinata, I already thought you were strong and brave, and I have been so proud of you for a long time, especially when I found out that you fought off those attacking ninjas. It's about time your father realized how amazing you are. Thank you, Naruto. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. Hinata was blushing, but she was brave enough to move her hand off of his, place it on his chest and lean forward to kiss his cheek. They were both blushing furiously when she pulled back, but that didn't stop Naruto from teasing her. Hinata, you're blushing again. He teased, rising up on one elbow to that he was leaning over her. So are you, Naruto? Hinata shot back, rolling over on her back and grinning up at him. Naruto's free hand shot out and he ran his fingers up and down her ribs, making her squirm and giggle. And whose fault is that? He teased as he tickled her. Naruto, please, stop, I can't breathe. Hinata pleaded through her giggles. Naruto laughed and stopped tickling her, but left his hand flat on her rib cage. You're so little. Naruto teased. Look at how much of your rib cage just one of my hands covers. So what? I've always been small, I'm used to it. She raised an eyebrow. And you don't have any right to talk. You used to be the same height as me. Just because you hit a growth spurt. Hinata trailed off, trying to stop her heart from leaping out of her chest from the feeling of his hand on her side. Naruto laughed, and Hinata's gaze was drawn to the strange marks on his cheeks. Like every other time she had seen the marks, Hinata wanted to reach out and touch them. This time, she didn't stop herself. Hinata reached up with both hands. Sensing what she was going to do, Naruto went still and let her frame his face with her hands briefly before she traced the whisker-like marks with her fingertips. Naruto shivered when she did so, which confused him. His whiskers had never been particularly sensitive before, but the feeling of Hinata's fingertips on his cheek was making him shiver. His eyes met her, and when their gazes locked, they both froze, Hinata's hand still resting on his cheeks and Naruto's hand still resting on Hinata's ribcage. With the sky a solid gray color outside the window, and the absolute stillness of the pre-dawn silence, it seemed like they were the only two people in the world. The two teenagers stared at each other, both of them hearts pounding so loud they were surprised the other couldn't hear it. The moment stretched out until Hinata was sure her heart would explode. Naruto broke the spell by smiled and leaning down to kiss Hinata's forehead, his lips soft and warm and lingering there just long enough to make Hinata's stomach somersault. It's still way early, Hinata. Let's try and get some more sleep, okay? Okay, Naruto, Hinata said. Naruto lay back down and pulled Hinata up against his chest, brushing his lips against her hair. Hinata closed her eyes and buried her face in Naruto's chest, basking in how safe and secure he made her feel. Within seconds, they were both asleep once again. When morning finally dawned, it found Naruto and Hinata sleeping peacefully. Hinata was comfortably cuddled up against Naruto's chest, and he had his arms wrapped around her securely. But that peace was about to be broken by an early morning visitor. Uzumaki. An angry voice echoed through Naruto's apartment, jolting both of them awake. Years of ninja training and instinct had Naruto up and running out of the bedroom and into the more spacious living room before he had really registered who was pissed at him. But it didn't take long to realize that Hyuga Neji had seen Naruto and Hinata in bed together. Crap, Naruto cursed as he dived behind his couch to dodge a blow from Neji. Neji, it isn't what it looks like. Silence, you bastard. Neji dived at Naruto, who avoided him easily. Oh shit. Naruto cursed loudly. Neji, stop it. Hinata threw herself into the chaos, wrapping her arms around his waist and trying to dig in her feet. Unfortunately, Hinata's bare feet couldn't get purchase on Naruto's polished wood floors, so she just slid along with Neji, only succeeding in slowing him down. She didn't use any gentle fist techniques on him, knowing that Neji thought he was looking out for her. Neji, damn it, listen to me. Naruto yelled as he dived into the kitchen. Neji, leave him alone, Hinata added, frantically pouring chakra into her feet, making them stick to the floor. She jerked Neji to a stop just before he reached the doorway of the kitchen. Let go, Hinata, I'm going to teach that bastard a lesson. Neji, no. Realizing that he wasn't going to stop anytime soon, at least not on his own, Hinata sighed. She concentrated chakra into her palm, and then released her grip on Neji. Moving with her highly developed speed, she slapped Neji on the side of his head, manipulating her chakra to knock him out. Neji stopped dead in his tracks and swayed. Then his eyes rolled up in his head and he slumped to the floor, unconscious. Whoa! Hinata had tried to catch her older, taller cousin, and ended up sprawled flat on her back with Neji on top of her, her eyes wide in surprise. Neji was heavy. Is it safe? Naruto asked nervously, peeking around the doorway. He's out cold. A little help, please. Hinata shoved at Neji's body ineffectively. Naruto, he's heavy. Right, sorry. Naruto grabbed one of Neji's arms and yanked, rolling Neji off of Hinata, who was a little red-faced. You okay? Yeah. Hinata got to her feet and brushed herself off. She turned to face Naruto, only to find him poking Neji with the handle of a broom. The Hyuga ninja didn't move. Naruto. Hinata scolded. Naruto dropped the broom and grinned sheepishly. What? He asked innocently, pushing the broom back into the kitchen with his foot. You know what? Hinata planted her hands on her hips and glared at Naruto, who wilted a little, but had the decency to look guilty. Hey, just wanted to make sure. Oh Naruto. Hinata shook her head. What am I going to do with you? Don't answer that, she added hastily when his eyes gleamed and he opened his mouth to say something. Naruto pouted, then winked at her, making her giggle. So, what are we going to do with him? Naruto asked, prodding Neji with his foot. I don't know. I didn't really think before I clocked him. Hinata admitted. How about out the window? Naruto suggested hopefully. Naruto. Into the river? Off a cliff? Naruto. What? Naruto looked panicked. Well, then I'll go out the window into the river, or off a cliff, because if I'm anywhere in the near vicinity when he wakes up, he's going to kill me. We could drop him off at the house. Hinata suggested. Then you'll tell your dad and I'll have both of them after me. That's so much better. Naruto looked close to having a nervous breakdown. Naruto, calm down. I'll protect you, Hinata said. Her words managed to snap Naruto out of his blind panic and he did calm down and start acting like his old self. I think you've got that backwards, he said with a mischievous grin. I'm supposed to be protecting you, remember? Maybe we should tie him to a chair. Huh? Naruto, focus. Neji, right there. Unconscious, remember? Maybe we should him to chair. Tie him to a chair. Do you have a better idea? You're supposed to be my bodyguard, and you can't protect me if Neji is chasing you all over the village. Naruto blinked and then grinned widely at Hinata, who blinked. What? Look at you Hinata, taking charge. Very cool. Well, someone had to. You were panicking. Hinata blushed, even as she defended herself and Naruto shook his head, still grinning. No Hinata, that was great. He raised an eyebrow. So, let's tie him up, make sure he can't untie himself and then we'll. He trailed off and looked at her, raising an eyebrow in expectation. Go shopping? She suggested. We'll go shopping. Naruto agreed. I need to get some groceries anyway. He gave her a huge exaggerated wink that had her blushing and giggling. That sound good to you? Yeah, Hinata nodded. That sounds perfect. Great. Now let's see, I think I have some rope around here somewhere. Haruno Sakura sighed as she entered the grocery store and grabbed a basket. Tsunade-sensei was only giving her a short break, and she had to spend it grocery shopping because she promised to pick up a few things for her mother. Oh well, she had promised, so she might as well do it. Sakura was about to turn down the vegetable aisle when she heard the voice of her teammate, Uzumaki Naruto. Well, she couldn't really call him a teammate anymore, she realized a little guiltily. Sasuke was still gone, and she was spending most of her time training under Tsunade, so she hadn't gone on a mission with Naruto for a while. She knew he did a lot of solo missions as a result, and she felt a little guilty about that, so she decided to go talk to him. But Naruto wasn't alone. Should we get carrots, Hinata? Do you like carrots, Naruto? Yeah, then we'll get carrots. Hinata put some carrots in her and Naruto's cart, which to Sakura's surprise, was almost full, with milk, break, cheese and other normal things. Can we get some ramen now, Hinata? Naruto mock whined, clasping his hand together and sticking out his bottom lip in a pout that made Hinata melt. Okay Naruto, now we'll go get ramen, Hinata said with a teasing sigh of exasperation. Naruto stuck his tongue out at her playfully. Caught up in the moment, Hinata forgot her shyness and made a face back at him, also sticking out her tongue. Naruto laughed as he poked her in the ribs, and she jumped, giggling as she smacked his wrist playfully. Naruto, that's not fair. She pouted cutely at him. You know my weak spot, but I don't even know if you're ticklish. Well, I'm not going to tell you. Naruto teased. He slid up next to her and nudged her gently with his elbow, then leaned in close to whisper in her ear, so close she could feel his breath on her neck. You'll just have to experiment and find out, he whispered. Hinata laughed quietly and bumped him with her hip. Naruto, you're incorrigible. She scolded him, grinned and ruffled Hinata's long hair playfully. Yeah, but that's why you hang out with me. Honestly Naruto, I don't know why I hang out with you. Hinata teased. Because I'm so lovable. Naruto teased back. That's debatable. Ouch, so mean Hinata. Sakura could hardly believe what she was seeing. Hyuga Hinata, the shyest, quietest ninja in their graduating class, and Uzumaki Naruto, the loudest, most outgoing ninja in the entire village, were shopping for groceries together. Not only that, but they were laughing and teasing each other with an ease that hinted at deep friendship and maybe something more. Sakura felt a suddenly and completely unexpected stab of jealousy. Sasuke's departure had broken her heart, and she had turned to Naruto for comfort and had, in the months before he left for training, come to expect that Naruto would always drop everything and rush to her side. She was the center of his world and she enjoyed his attention, even as she continually rebuked his romantic advances. But now he was withdrawing from Sakura, treating her like an annoying but lovable sister, but no longer trailing after her like a lovesick puppy. He still smiled when he saw her, but he no longer gave her his full attention unless they were alone. If they were in a crowd, his eyes were always looking past her, eagerly scanning for someone. All those times he looked past me, he was looking for Hinata. Sakura realized, the truth hitting her like a punch in the gut as she saw Naruto grin at Hinata as he gave a strand of her hair a playful tug. They were far from alone in the crowded store. Yet Naruto's eyes never left Hinata for more than a heartbeat, always coming back to rest on her as if irresistibly drawn to her. He also couldn't seem to keep his hands off her, touching her shoulder or reaching out to run a hand over her hair. Hinata smiled gently whenever he did so, sometimes touching his arm, or even reaching up to brush her fingers over his cheeks. Naruto also seemed to exude a possessive and protective aura while around Hinata, like she would shatter if someone got too close. Naruto was so gentle around Hinata, which was never a word she would never have associated with her teammate. Naruto had always been brash, loud and impulsive, charging forward with a cheerful smile, but not much finesse. But with Hinata, he was almost calm, walking slowly at Hinata's side, talking and teasing her softly, keeping close but not crowding her, and keeping his touches soft and gentle, careful not to be too rough with his graceful yet calloused hands. Sakura had never seen this side of Naruto, and felt a little cheated. What was so special about Hinata that Naruto sought her out in a crowd? What was so special about her pale skin and creepy eyes that Naruto couldn't keep his eyes or his hands off of her? What was it about her that calmed Naruto's boundless energy and brought out a gentleness that no one else had ever seen? What does she have that I don't? Sakura wondered. She would have to think about this, so she withdrew without speaking to them or drawing attention to herself, leaving the two to their shopping. Naruto, I think that's enough ramen. Hinata said with a laugh as Naruto dumped a huge armful of instant ramen into the basket. You sure? Naruto asked doubtfully, tilting his head and narrowing his eyes as he looked at the pile of ramen. I'm sure, Hinata assured him, eyeing the pile with wide eyes. Really? You're not just saying that? Really? Hinata insisted. Let's go pay and get out of here. She began pushing the cart, and Naruto fell in beside her. Neji should be awake by now. Hinata reminded Naruto, hoping to distract him. Naruto flinched, and rubbed the back of his blonde head. Oh yeah, he looked at her hopefully. Hinata, do we have to go back? He's still in your living room, Naruto. Hinata reminded him. Oh, right. Naruto made a face and kicked at the floor. Stupid Neji. Naruto, be nice. He thinks he's looking out for me. He wants to kill me. He's just become a little overprotective lately. He'll grow out of it. You're awful calm about this. I just know Neji. If we explain it to him, he'll calm down. You sure? Positive. Now, let's get out of here. Okay. Once they were outside, Naruto took the heavier bags and walked slightly behind Hinata, all of his senses on alert. He took his bodyguard job very seriously after all. But they made it to Naruto's apartment without incident. They could hear Neji swearing before they even reached the door. When they opened the door and he saw them, he started yelling. Uzumaki, you bastard. Untie me and fight me like a man. What's the matter, Neji? Naruto taunted. Can't you use your chakra to get loose? You know very well I can't, because Hinata blocked off my chakra. Yeah, well, I'll let her explain while I put the groceries away. Naruto took Hinata's bags and escaped into the kitchen. All right, Neji, let's get something straight. Nothing happened last night. I had a nightmare, so Naruto stayed with me so I could sleep. That's it, really? Neji narrowed his eyes suspiciously. Neji, have I ever lied to you? I'm a lousy liar, you know that. Hinata was pleading with her cousin now, and Neji sighed. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry I lost my temper. Apology accepted. I'm sorry I knocked you out. Apology accepted. Could you untie me now and unblock my chakra? Yeah. Hinata activated her Byakugan and unblocked Neji's chakra, and then untied him. He stood and started stretching. You should apologize to Naruto. Hinata insisted, but Neji balked. Hinata, Neji. Hinata gave him a Hyuga glare, and Neji sighed. His shy, reserved little cousin was really starting to come out of her shell, and Neji knew that Naruto was responsible. Fine, I'll go apologize to the blonde moron. Neji. What? Neji complained. Be nice. Naruto's my friend. I wouldn't let him throw you out the window, you can't call him names. Fine. Neji poked his head into the kitchen and saw Naruto sitting on the counter. I'm sorry I tried to kill you. Apology accepted. I guess I can understand you wanting to look after Hinata. Naruto motioned at the counter where he had set out several packets of instant ramen. You want to eat lunch with us? Sure. Neji agreed. And then I have something to tell you both. So, what did you need to tell us? Naruto asked Neji as the three ninjas finished their ramen. Neji sighed as he fixed his ice-white eyes on his younger cousin and her temporary bodyguard. There was another attack last night. Neji flinched slightly when Hinata gasped. Is everyone okay? Hanabi, father? Hinata asked anxiously. Everyone is fine. Neji assured her, noticing that Naruto reached out and rubbed her back comfortingly, looking concerned. Luckily, we discovered the intruders before they reached your room, so we don't think they have discovered that you're gone yet. Plus, the only ones who know you're with Naruto are me, your father, and your sister, so your secret should be safe for a while longer. Good, Naruto said with a sigh of relief. But, Neji added, they're probably getting frustrated, so they might attack during the day, relying on the power of surprise. Neji paused, and then sighed. Just be careful you two, okay? He checked the time, and then stood up. Well, I better get going. Uncle will be wondering where I am. Neji, you won't tell father about this morning, will you? Hinata asked worriedly. She might have been able to calm down Neji, but that's because he was her cousin and they had spent a lot of time together after the Chunin exams. Father was, well, her father. Neji finally gave her a smile. It was a tiny smile, but it was a smile. Don't worry, Hinata. My lips are sealed. Thank you, Neji. Ni-san. Hinata smiled as she said, Ni-san, something she hadn't called Neji for a long time. Don't worry about it, he said. Naruto and Hinata walked Neji to the door. Just before he closed the door behind him, Neji locked eyes with Naruto. Take care of her, Naruto. I will, Naruto said seriously. Neji nodded, then left, closing the door behind him. As soon as the door had closed, Naruto pulled Hinata into his arms. Hinata wrapped her arms around his waist desperately and pressed her face into his chest, shaking slightly. You gonna be okay? Naruto asked worriedly. I will be. Hinata mumbled into his chest. She tightened her grip when he went to pull back. But not yet. Okay, Naruto said, smiling as he pulled her close. Okay, Hinata. Hinata finally took a deep breath and tilted her head back, resting her chin on his chest. I'm okay now, she whispered. You sure? Naruto reached up and tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear, then rested his hand on her cheek. She closed her eyes and leaned into his touch, then nodded. Yeah, she opened her eyes and smiled at him. Thanks, Naruto. No problem, kiddo. Naruto ran his hand over Hinata's hair, and gently kissed the top of her head. Naruto stepped back from the hug and Hinata let him go, smiling at the memory of the feeling of his lips on the top of her head. Let's go do some training, Naruto suggested, and Hinata nodded in agreement. I think that sounds like a great idea. Well, come on then. Naruto held out his hand, and Hinata blushed as she took it, entwining their fingers. Naruto was grinning as he pulled her out the door of his apartment, and Hinata couldn't help but grin back at him. Hinata noticed that the closer they got to the training ground, the happier Naruto seemed to get, which made Hinata smile. Naruto got so much joy out of training, out of being a ninja, out of life. Hinata wished that more people could be like that, could get joy out of simple things. Okay Hinata, what do you want to work on? Naruto asked her as they entered the training ground, which was strangely empty for that time of day. How about just sparring and weapons work? Hinata suggested. Sure, just straight on sparring, or do you want to work on your gentle fist? No, you heard Neji. We have to keep our guard up, and you won't be a very good bodyguard if I've blocked off all your chakra. Good point. We'll just work on speed and agility. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he formed a training schedule in his head. I'm faster than you, but you've got me beat in agility. So we should be good. He grinned at her. What do you think? Sounds good Naruto. Hinata preceded Naruto into the training ground. Naruto hung back and carefully scanned around them. Naruto couldn't afford to let his guard down, not yet. He couldn't bear the thought of Hinata being hurt because he was distracted. Yeah, by her. He added mentally, shaking his head ruefully. Satisfied that they were alone, Naruto followed Hinata into the middle of the training field. Facing each other, they both stretched for about 10 minutes, then slid into fighting stance. True to their agreement, Hinata did not activate her Byakugan, or stand in her gentle fist stance. She simply used a basic sparring stance that she had been taught at the academy, and Naruto did the same. Hinata struck first, aiming a side kick at Naruto's ribs. He blocked it easily and aimed a punch at her chest. Hinata jumped back to avoid it, then darted back in as Naruto was thrown off balance and caught Naruto in the stomach with a powerful kick. Naruto got the wind knocked out of him and fell to the ground, but had a grin on his face as he quickly rolled out of Hinata's rather short reach and sprang to his feet. Nice move Hinata. You're faster than I thought. Thank you Naruto. Hinata blushed even as she kept her guard up. She flipped out of the way as he rushed her with his phenomenal speed, but she was a fraction too slow, and his fist clipped her shoulder, sending her sprawling in the dust. She recovered quickly, jumping back up, and she and Naruto continued to circle each other. They continued like this, trading blows and dodging each other for about 20 minutes before Naruto called for a break. They were both sweating heavily, but Hinata was surprised to note that she was barely breathing hard. I have gotten stronger. I knew I could, she thought triumphantly. Naruto seemed to know what she was thinking because he crossed to her and gripped her elbow, and she instinctively gripped his in return, in a gesture of congratulations between two ninjas. See Hinata, you're getting stronger all the time. He smiled at her and reached up to brush a strand of hair off her cheek. I knew you would do it. Hinata blushed, and Naruto laughed gently. All right, weapons next, right? Right. Hinata drew one of her kunai knives, and laughed when Naruto fanned out a handful of shuriken like a hand of playing cards. Hinata and Naruto spent about 20 minutes doing weapon sparring, using weapons with specially dulled edges that would bruise, but not break the skin. When they were finished, Hinata had a bruise across the back of her left wrist, on her right shoulder, 2 on her ribs, 1 on each side, and 1 on her left elbow. That one had stung so badly that tears had sprung to her eyes. Naruto was sporting a bruise across his right cheekbone, on the left side of his neck, across his right bicep, and 3 across his ribs, 2 on the left side and 1 of the right. After comparing bruises, during which Naruto made Hinata laugh so hard she had to sit down while tears streamed down her face, they moved on to throwing weapons. They started with back further away from the target with each throw. Then they worked on throwing accurately while moving, flipping, rolling, diving, running and even falling. By the time they finished, Hinata was exhausted, while Naruto was still ready to do more. Naruto. That was all Hinata had to say. Naruto instantly realized what was wrong. Are you tired Hinata? Yes. I'm sorry. What? Hinata. No. It's not your fault. You actually kept up with me better than most people. That's great. You were amazing. Thank you. Hinata blushed at the compliment. Come on, let's go. Naruto dropped a friendly arm across Hinata's shoulders. Naruto, we don't have to leave. You keep training. I can sit down to rest and watch you. You sure? She should have recognized that grin on Naruto's face, but she didn't. She just nodded at his question. Then yelped when he wrapped those amazingly powerful hands around her waist, lifted her up above his head and set her on top of one of the huge training posts. Naruto. She squeaked, grabbing at the sides of the post. She realized that the post was big enough around that she wasn't going to fall off, but it was so high. Naruto was grinning up at her, that same adorable grin that had been making her stomach do cartwheels since she was 12 years old. See Hinata, the way I'm thinking, if you sit up there, you can still rest and watch me train, but I can still keep an eye on you because you're right in the middle of the field, and up in the air. Hinata opened her mouth to protest, but realized that she couldn't really argue with his logic. Still, but, Naruto, it's so high, she pleaded. Naruto blinked up at her. Hinata, are you afraid of heights? He looked so concerned for her that Hinata just melted. Not normally, but normally, I'm not sitting on top of a training post. Don't worry Hinata. Naruto was smiling again. I won't let you fall. He winked. You know that, right? Yes, I know that Naruto. She smiled back at him. Go train. I'm okay. You're okay? I'm fine. Go. Okay. Naruto moved to another training post, one from which he could still clearly see Hinata, and began practicing taijutsu strikes, hitting the post from different stances and distances, pushing himself faster and faster until he was almost a blur to Hinata's amazed eyes. But as she watched him, admiring how his body flowed smoothly from not only stance to stance, but from style to style as well, she realized that while she was sitting there, she could work on the style she had created for herself, the one that used her precise chakra control to its best advantage. Right now, sitting here, she could work on her newest talent, stretching out her chakra to try and identify any other she found. Closing her eyes and relaxing, Hinata allowed her chakra to flow outwards. She could instantly identify Naruto, as bright as the summer sun and as warm as one of his smiles. His chakra leapt to touch hers, and they brushed and swirled together, entwining on the edges like their fingers had when they held hands. Hinata smiled and pushed her chakra further, finally bumping into two very familiar chakras. One was a light brown and felt warm, friendly and furry, and had an identical, smaller chakra next to it. The other was a light green and radiated a soothing, watchful calmness. Hinata smiled to herself and pulled her chakra back, her body absorbing it like a sponge. Then she opened her eyes. Naruto, she called out. He stopped mid-kick, pulling his leg back in and using his momentum to spin around to look at her. Hinata took a moment to drink in the sight of him. He had removed his jacket, revealing his tight black t-shirt. He was covered in a fine layer of sweat, which made his spikes droop slightly and made his shirt cling to every muscle he had. Naruto grinned when he realized she was looking at him, tilting his head to the side and raising his eyebrows. She blushed furiously and looked away. KK Kiba-kun and SS Shino-kun are CC coming. Hinata managed to say, wanting to kick herself for once again stuttering. Naruto blinked in surprise, then grinned even bigger. Hey, you were practicing your chakra sensing technique, weren't you? Yes. Cool. What did I look like? Like the sun, Hinata said before she could stop herself. Yellow and orange and bright and warm. She blushed when she heard the words coming out of her mouth and mentally slapped herself. I sound like an idiot. Really? My chakra always felt like red or blue to me. Naruto said. Oh, once I recognize a chakra, I assign a color to it, so it's easier to remember. Hinata explained. Ah, that makes sense. Naruto was still grinning up at Hinata when he suddenly called out. Yo, Kiba, Shino, what's up? There was no answer from the forest, and Naruto rolled his eyes. Guys, I know you're out there. How did you know? Kiba walked into the clearing with Akamaru and Shino, pouting. A good ninja never reveals his methods. Naruto said, winking up at Hinata when she giggled. Kiba looked up at her. Hinata, what are you doing up there? Resting and training. She smiled down at her teammates and gave a little wave. What's up guys? We're looking for you. Why? Neji and Lee asked to meet us for a training session. Shino said, speaking for the first time. Don't forget about Tenten, she's hot. Kiba burst out. Everyone turned to look at him. What? She's cute. So's a mountain lion. And that's probably less deadly. Naruto pointed out. Not to mention that she's dating Neji. Hinata added. So? She's still hot. It's your death wish. Naruto said dismissively. Kiba balled a fist, and Shino intervened. So, Hinata, do you want to come with us? He asked her. Hinata had never passed on a training session, so he and Kiba were both shocked when she shook her head. Sorry guys, but Naruto completely wore me out. I'm just waiting for him to wear himself out so he can go. How about tomorrow? Okay, Shino agreed. Lee, Tenten and Neji should all be free tomorrow. You come too, Naruto. Kiba offered. Neji doesn't like me. Naruto protested, half-heartedly, since there was no chance of Hinata going anywhere without him. Neji doesn't like anyone. Kiba scoffed. Except for Tenten, I think he just, tolerates people. That's not convincing me. Stop whining. Just come so we can spar. Fine, I'll come just to kick your butt. Again. Yeah right. I'm a lot stronger now. Bring it, dog boy. What did you call me? You heard me. Let's go, right now. Knock it off, Kiba. Shino ordered his teammate, who was nose to nose with Naruto. Well, nose to throat really, since Naruto had, finally, hit his growth spurt and was taller than Kiba. In fact, Naruto was now taller than just about every ninja in the village, something that the former runt took great pleasure in. Come on, Kiba, we're already late. See you two tomorrow. Shino dragged Kiba out of the clearing. Just before they passed out of sight, Naruto heard Kiba. Hey Shino, what do you think would happen if I slipped while sparring with Tenten and managed to grope? I think you'd lose your hand. Well, that's no fun. Kiba, you're an idiot. Well, that's not very nice. Oh, for God's sake. Ow, easy Shino. Naruto looked up at Hinata and raised an eyebrow. Hinata shrugged, looking just as surprised as Naruto. So, Kiba's a pervert. I'm just as surprised as you are. He used to be such a nice boy. Hinata said, completely deadpan. Somehow, I doubt that. Naruto, that's not very nice. Hinata protested, but she and Naruto were both laughing. Hinata stifled a yawn as she watched Naruto. She had exhausted her chakra about 5 minutes ago, after having been able to expand her chakra sensing technique halfway through town. Naruto had stripped off his t-shirt when he started to sweat even harder, and Hinata amused herself by watching the way his muscles moved under his tanned skin. But her expended chakra was making her tired and really hungry. Naruto pulled off a finishing move, then stepped back, panting, and glanced up at Hinata. I think that's it for today. You hungry? Want to get something to eat? He offered. Sure, just get me down from here first. She teased. He laughed as he walked over to his clothes. Of course. Just a second. He slipped his shirt and jacket on, then walked back over and reached up to Hinata, his familiar grin covering his face. Come here, kiddo. Hinata grinned back, and slid off the top of the post toward him. He grabbed her around the waist, and took a step back as he started to lower her down. The heel of his foot landed on a small rock, which caused his foot to slip out from under him, and Naruto suddenly found himself flat on his back, all of the air forced out of his lungs, and Hinata on top of him. Naruto, are you okay? Hinata propped herself up by placing her hands on Naruto's shoulders and pushing herself up. Yeah, I'm fine. Naruto lifted himself up on his elbows. His movement caused Hinata's hands to slip off of his shoulders, and she fell against his chest, knocking Naruto down again. This time though, they ended up nose to nose. They both blushed furiously. Sorry. Hinata blurted out. She put one hand next to his head and pushed herself up. She was about to roll off of him when Naruto stopped her by reaching up and touching the side of her face. Then he slid his hand up into her hair and held her head, staring into her eyes. Hinata froze, her long black hair falling over one shoulder and hanging almost to the ground. It was almost like a curtain, shielding them from the real world. Naruto looked up at her, his face serious. Mesmerized by the look in those deep blue eyes, she touched his face with her free hand, tracing his familiar features with her fingertips, paying special attention to the marks on his cheeks, which made him shiver. Hinata trailed her fingertips across Naruto's lips, and almost jumped out of her skin when he kissed her fingertips. Naruto smiled at her surprise, and slid his hand out of her hair to return the gesture. He traced her features so gently with his calloused fingertips that Hinata thought her bones would melt. Then he slid his hand back up into her hair and stared once again into her eyes. Hinata and Naruto both smiled at the same time, and Naruto pulled her down to him. Hinata felt like time was slowing down as she got closer and closer to Naruto. She closed her eyes and he drew her close enough to feel his breath on her lips and the warmth of his skin. Just a few more seconds in. Naruto and Hinata both jumped when they heard a familiar bark, and then a very familiar voice. Akamaru, you spoiled the moment. Kiba, what Tenten? Ow, you idiot, you gave us away. That was Neji's voice. There was a sound of movement, then Kiba backed into the clearing. Neji, Tenten, Lee and Shino all followed him out of the trees, while Akamaru was at his partner's side, looking just as guilty. Neji and Tenten looked furious. Tenten was brandishing several weapons, and Neji had activated his Byakugan. "Oh come on guys, I didn't mean to," Kiba protested. "How can you not understand the concept of surveillance? God, how did you ever become a ninja? Hey, that's just rude." "Hey Neji," Tenten called to her boyfriend. "Yes Tenten? I say we get him." "I agree." "Oh shit." Kiba and Akamaru took off for the village with the weapons and gentle fist masters hot on their heels. By this time, Naruto and Hinata had scrambled to their feet and were simply staring, their jaws hanging open. "Ukai," Naruto finally said. "That was, weird," Hinata suggested. "Weird works." Naruto agreed. "Bizarre works too." He and Hinata both jumped when Rock Lee decided that he had been silent along. "Ah, the passion and tenderness of youth. Please Hinata, Naruto, you must not let our presence deter you, we are all young here. You may continue." Naruto and Hinata simply froze, staring at Lee, their eyes so wide Shino was surprised that they hadn't popped out of their heads. Seeing their expressions and that Naruto's eyebrow was twitching, which gave him the sneaking suspicion that Naruto would mutilate Lee when he snapped out of it, Shino decided to step in and prevent bloodshed, and Lee's probable demise. "Come on Lee, let's go pry Tenten and Neji off of Kiba. They've probably sealed off his chakra and hung him from a tree to use as target practice." Shino grabbed the arm of the older ninja and started to pull the taijutsu master away. But. No buts, Lee, come on. Kiba's counting on us. We can't let down our comrade. Come on Shino. Now Lee was dragging Shino, who was now probably regretting saving Lee from Naruto. Naruto and Hinata stared after the retreating ninja, then Naruto turned to Hinata, rubbing his twitching eyebrow. That wasn't weird or bizarre, it was scary. He shuddered. Hinata just nodded dumbly, still a little dazed. Naruto sighed, rubbed his eyebrow one last time, assured himself that it had stopped twitching, then reached down and took Hinata's hand, entwining their fingers. "Come on Hinata, let's go get something to eat and then go home." "That sounds good to me," Hinata finally said, squeezing Naruto's hand and smiling at him. Naruto smiled back as they made their way back to the village. As was Naruto's tradition, they went for ramen. Both were rather tired and exceedingly hungry, so they ate in silence. Hinata finished first and watched Naruto idly, blinking sleepily as she did so. Naruto finally finished, and paid for both of them. Hinata roused herself enough to protest. "Naruto, you don't have to." "No Hinata, my treat." Naruto grinned and held out his hand to her. Hinata smiled and took the offered hand as she slid off her stool. Hinata yawned as they walked to Naruto's apartment and Naruto laughed. "Tired Hinata?" "Yeah, I completely drained my chakra on accident. I haven't done that in a long time, and it probably wasn't very smart." Hinata yawned again and let her head rest against Naruto's shoulder. He slowed his pace for her. "Don't worry, we'll be home soon. And I'm sure no one's following us. I've got both of our chakras suppressed and I keep checking, so you're safe. You can go right to sleep." He released her hand so he could wrap his arm around her shoulders. "And no nightmares this time. You almost gave me a heart attack last night." "Sorry Naruto." "Hinata, I'm just teasing you. I'll keep any nightmares away, I promise." "Thanks." Hinata yawned again, then stumbled from pure fatigue and fell to her knees. She had the bad luck to have one of her knees land squarely on a rock. She yelped in pain and rolled to the side, holding her knee. "Hinata, are you okay? What happened?" "My knee hit a rock." "Ouch." Naruto winced in sympathy as he knelt down next to her. "That hurts the worst." Hinata just nodded and hugged her knee. Naruto reached out and brushed away a few involuntary tears, then cupped her cheek gently. "Can you walk?" "I think so. Help me up." Hinata held out both hands, but Naruto ignored them, and wrapped his hands around her waist instead. In one smooth movement, he stood up and brought Hinata with him. He held her close for a second, and Hinata leaned against his chest, letting him support her weight instead of her injured knee. She took a deep breath and leaned her forehead against his chest, right above his heart. They both stood there for a minute, lost in the moment. Then Naruto sighed and loosened his grip on her. Hinata echoed his sigh with one of her own, and stepped back, putting weight on her injured knee. It hurt. She winced and her knee bent involuntarily. She might have fallen if Naruto hadn't grabbed her. Whoa, ouch, she muttered. Okay, that answers my question. You can't walk, so piggyback time Hinata. Naruto. Hinata felt her face flare red, and became annoyed at herself. Hinata, you're blushing. Naruto ran a finger down her cheek, which just made Hinata blush more and Naruto laugh. Come on now. He turned his back on Hinata, bent his knees and glanced over his shoulder at her with a grin. Hinata firmly told herself to calm down, and took a deep breath. Then she wrapped her arms around his neck from behind. The heartbeat she had tried to slow down spiked when he grabbed her upper thighs and hiked her up onto his back. He shifted her body so that most of her weight was above his hips and set off down the street. Hinata let her eyes close, and rested her chin on his shoulder. Her cheek brushed Naruto's and his blonde stubble rasped against her cheek. She shivered at the unfamiliar sensation and pressed closer to him. His skin was warm and smelled like smoke and leaves, the outdoors, and even a faint underlying scent of sweat from training. Hinata didn't mind, she probably smelled like sweat herself. She must have dozed off because the next thing she knew, Naruto was gently laying her down on his couch. Naruto had known the instant Hinata had fallen asleep. Her arms had gone slack, and she slumped over his shoulder. He had walked very carefully and softly, trying not to wake her up, and had been lowering her onto his couch when she woke up. Hey. He smiled as she rubbed at her eyes. Sorry if I woke up. You didn't. I was just dozing. Hinata yawned and stretched, as Naruto slid out of his jacket and tossed it over the back of the couch. You want me to take a look at that knee? Do you mind? Nah, I'm hopeless at medical jutsu, but Jiraiya did teach me basic first aid, and I've injured myself enough to know a bit. He looked at her tight ninja outfit and raised an eyebrow. You might want to change though, into something looser. I can lend you another pair of pants and a shirt. Thanks. No problem. He started to leave the room, then stopped to wink at her. Besides, you look a hell of a lot better in them than I do. Naruto. Hinata burst out laughing. You're impossible. Yeah, well I try. And you're succeeding. Ah, you know you love it. Naruto gave her a smug grin, then left her in the livening room while he went to get the extra clothes for her. He was back quickly with the clothes, the familiar orange and black training pants and white t-shirt. He passed them to her, then helped her limp into the bathroom to change. He waited outside, then went in when she called him. Just like last night, he had to grin when he saw her. The clothes were extremely large on her, making her look so small, fragile and young that Naruto just wanted to wrap his arms around her and protect her. Hinata noticed his grin, and tilted her head to the side, grinning back at him. What? Nothing. It's just like I said, you look a hell of a lot better in my clothes than I do. He leered at her playfully and Hinata rolled her eyes as she giggled. Naruto reached out and ruffled her hair affectionately, then gathered up her hair in one hand and let the heavy dark locks tumble through his fingers. Come on, I'll carry you into the livening room so I can look at that knee. Naruto scooped her up, laughing at her squeaked protest. He carried her into the livening room and set her gently on his couch. Then Naruto knelt in front of Hinata and slid up the pant leg to look at her injured knee. He examined the bruise that was forming, pressing around it gently, pulling back when Hinata winced. Then he sat back on his heels and smiled up at her. Well, you are sporting one beauty of a bruise, and it may hurt for a little bit, but that's it. He rose to his feet and slid onto the couch next to her. Hinata drew her leg up to her chest and examined her knee herself, brushing her small fingers over the bruise. Ouch, she muttered. Naruto laughed as he pulled up his own pant leg to reveal his own knee, which had a thin, jiggered, bone-white scar. Hinata knew what a scar that uneven and white meant. A very deep cut had been allowed, or forced, to heal naturally, with no stitches or jutsu. She frowned as she reached out to trace the scar. Naruto, what happened? Naruto also traced the scar, his finger trailing hers. I fell on a very sharp rock while going really fast. It hurt and was bleeding really bad, but Jiraiya and I are both really bad at medical jutsu, so all we could do was stop the bleeding and wrap it. Man, it hurt for weeks. I bet. Hinata gathered up her courage and kissed her fingertips, then pressed them to the scar. There, a kiss to make it better. Smiling at his baffled look, she explained. It's something my mother used to do when I was little and would hurt myself playing. She'd always kiss it better. She smiled at the memory, and Naruto also smiled. But his smile was sad. I never had anyone kiss it better before Hinata. Thank you. You're welcome, Naruto. She narrowed her eyes when his grin went from sad to mischievous. What are you thinking? That I should return the favor. He leaned forward, his eyes never leaving hers. His breath was warm on her knee and she froze, her wide eyes locked on his. He paused just centimeters from her skin, then brushed his lips against the bruise in a kiss. Hinata thought her heart would stop. Then he looked up at her. For the first time, Naruto looked vulnerable, and Hinata just wanted to wrap her arms around him and soothe and protect him from everything and everyone. She smiled at him, and he grinned back as he sat back against the couch. Remembering his bruises from training, she gathered all of her courage and leaned forward. Naruto grinned, but knew that she was gathering up every shred of her courage, so he stayed very still. Hinata pushed up Naruto's right shelf, and kissed the bruise that she had left across his bicep. Naruto laughed softly and finally moved, pulling her into his arms. He stretched out his lips as he did so that Hinata was lying on top of him, her head resting on his chest. She sighed and relaxed against him. As soon as she was comfortable, Naruto reached down and gently wrapped his fingers around her left wrist, lifting it to his lips and kissing the bruise. Hinata blushed and buried her face in his chest, her heart feeling like it would jump out of her throat at any moment. She took a deep breath, then looked up at Naruto as he touched her cheek. Just like before, at the training ground, time seemed to simply slow down and almost stop as Naruto caressed her cheek. Drowning in his deep blue eyes, Hinata leaned up and kissed the bruise she had left across his right cheekbone. Naruto chuckled again, so softly that she felt his chest move more than heard the sound. His hand was on her cheek again, moving her face, drawing her closer. His lips, soft and warm, touched hers, lightly, just for a fraction of a second, and then there was a knock on his door, causing both of them to pull back. Hinata felt like destroying something, preferably the person behind the door, and Naruto's mood wasn't much better. Damn it, he snarled, revealing his large canines, and let his head fall back against the couch. Hinata could see his pulse pounding at the base of his neck, and she had to physically stop herself from reaching up to touch him. There was another knock. Oh, for God's sake, go away. Naruto yelled. Naruto? It's Sakura. You better get that. Hinata kissed his cheek and slid off of him. Naruto shook his head and reached for her, but she pointed at the door. Naruto pouted, then pushed himself off the couch and stomped to the door. He yanked it open and raised an eyebrow at the pink-haired ninja. Yeah? Naruto, can I talk to you? Her eyes went wide as she looked past him and saw Hinata sitting on his couch, wearing a very familiar pair of orange and black training pants and a white t-shirt. Alone? She squeaked. Naruto growled and ran a hand over his face. He could still feel Hinata on his lips, so he pulled his lips back from his oversized canines in a silent snarl, and rolled his shoulders, feeling the tightness there. Then he stepped out into the hallway and pulled the door almost closed behind him. He left a small gap so he could hear if Hinata needed him. Extremely sensitive hearing was a huge plus. Naruto leaned one shoulder against the wall, and fixed those deep, wild blue eyes of his on Sakura. There, we're alone. What's on your mind? What's going on with you and Hinata? Sakura burst out, surprised at herself. She had rehearsed what she was going to say on the way over here, and that wasn't it. But that was what had come out. And now Naruto was narrowing his eyes and glaring at her. Why do you care? What business of yours is it? Naruto, we're friends and teammates. Oh, stop it, Sakura. Naruto burst out. You never treated me like a friend or a teammate. All you ever cared about was Sasuke. I thought of him as a friend, but he tried to kill me. You're just mad and jealous because I'm spending time with someone else, because I finally realized that you were just using me. Naruto, that's not true. Sakura, I love you like a sister, but we're not friends. You treated me like a lapdog, when you even paid any attention to me. You ignored me whenever Sasuke was within spitting distance, insulted me when it suited you, and you always left me alone to go after Sasuke. He ran a hand through his hair. Sakura, we're not even teammates anymore. Most of my missions are with Hinata, Kiba and Shino, or their solo missions. Hinata is a true friend. She's a Hyuga freak. She's too shy to even talk to you. Sakura bust out, and instantly knew it was a mistake. Stop it, Sakura. Hinata's not a freak, she's my friend. And, so what if she's shy and quiet? It's a refreshing change from loud, Brash girls who knock me head over heels every time they lose their temper or their mood changes. She's very sweet, and she actually looks at me, and listens to me when I talk to her, instead of calling me an idiot and smacking me around. Just before I fought Neji, she encouraged me instead of automatically assuming that I would lose, like everyone else. Ino told me about how you spent half of my match worrying about Sasuke instead of cheering for me, like a true teammate should. Hinata has always stood up for me and cheered me on, even before we became close. Naruto. To her horror, Sakura felt tears coming on, tears that she couldn't stop. As soon as Naruto saw her crying, his face paled and he started panicking. He hated it when Sakura cried, he never knew what to do. Comforting Hinata felt natural, but he always felt awkward and uncertain when he tried to comfort Sakura. Sakura, don't cry. Please, don't cry. I can't handle it when you cry. Naruto was practically begging her, and that just made Sakura cry harder. Naruto was right, she had been a horrible friend and teammate to him. Naruto, I'm so sorry. She sobbed. She stepped forward, pressing her face into his chest as she cried. She felt his arms come around her, as awkward and clumsy as ever. There was none of the gentle protectiveness she had seen when he was with Hinata. With Hinata, Naruto had been sure and confident, knowing what to say and how to touch. With Sakura he was awkward and wary, always ready to leap away should Sakura turn violent. Sakura pulled away and looked up at Naruto, studying his face, his features so familiar, yet it was almost like she was seeing them for the first time. His hair was such an unusual shade of yellow that your eye was drawn to it almost instantly, and it seemed to grow in wild, untidy spikes all over his head. The spikes seemed a little shorter than she remembered, like he had just gotten it cut. His blue eyes were so large, wild and blue that you could drown in them. And though he pretended otherwise, those eyes saw things that even experienced ninjas missed. He wasn't a scrawny runt anymore. In fact, he was one of the tallest ninjas in the village, and was leanly muscular, tight muscles packed on top of tight muscles, instead of scrawny. His muscles were tightly compacted, like those of a huge cat, and that was how he moved, smooth and silent. Sakura once again felt tears sting her eyes as she realized how much he had changed, without her noticing. But Hinata noticed. She realized, that's what's so special about her. She noticed Naruto, even when nobody else did. Sakura closed her eyes to fight the tears. I could have had him. I could have given up on Sasuke and been with Naruto. But now I've lost him, and Sasuke. I've lost both of them and it's my own fault. Sakura pulled away from Naruto, her aching heart cracking slightly when he let her go. I'm sorry I wasn't a better friend, Naruto. Sakura whispered, tears trickling down her cheeks as she turned to go. Naruto blinked, baffled. What? No. Sakura, wait a minute. Naruto leapt forward after her and grabbed her elbow. He spun her around and grabbed both of her upper arms. She didn't fight him, just stared at the ground. Damn it, girl. You can be damn confusing at times. Look at me. Her eyes remained focused on the ground and he gave her a slight shake. When she still didn't look at him, he reached out to cup her chin and lifted her face to look at him. Blue eyes meet green and Naruto smiled. Sakura, you don't have to be sorry. It's okay, really. And you know what? I have enough friends. He grinned at her. But I don't have another little sister. Oh, Naruto. Sakura hugged him, her bruised and cracked heart healing when she felt him return the embrace naturally and confidently, with no trace of his previous awkwardness. Wait a sec. Sakura pushed back and glared at him playfully. Little sister? I'm older than you. 7 months older. But smaller. Naruto put a hand on her head to illustrate how much shorter than him she was now. So you get to be the little sister. His grin got bigger. Deal with it. Fine. For now. Sakura smiled at him gently. Thanks, Oni-chan. She went up on tiptoe and kissed his cheek, then whispered in his ear. Don't let her go. Don't make the same mistake I did. Huh? Naruto went to grab her arm again, but she avoided him this time and slipped down the stairs. Naruto ran a hand through his hair and growled. Damn it, I'm starting to agree with Shikamaru. Girls are just too troublesome. Except one. He amended silently, thinking about Hinata. Then the meaning of Sakura's words, don't let her go, hit him like a ton of bricks. She wanted him to tell Hinata how he felt. Hell, Naruto wanted to tell her how he felt, but he couldn't. Not until he told her something far more important, and potentially more devastating. Suddenly uneasy, he rubbed at his stomach. It was time to bring Hinata in on the secret about what was currently cohabiting his body. Hinata was curled up on the couch when Naruto came back into the apartment and shut the door. She stood up and hugged him as soon as he got close to her, which told him she had heard everything. He hugged her back, burying his nose in her blue-black hair. Hinata pulled back slightly and smiled up at him. "You're very sweet, Naruto. And you're a good friend." "Hinata." Naruto framed her face with his hands. He wanted to kiss her, desperately so, but it wasn't the time or place. She needed to know. He needed her to know. "What is it, Naruto?" she asked. She could sense he was troubled. "Hinata, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" Her eyes searched his face worriedly. "Let's sit down." He led her to the couch and they sat down. They both turned to face each other, and Naruto took her hands, entwining their fingers. He didn't seem to know how to start, but Hinata didn't push him. Finally, he took a deep breath and lifted his eyes to hers. "What do you know about the Kyuubi?" he asked. Hinata blinked, confused, but Naruto was completely serious. "Well, it happened about 2 months before I was born, so all I know is what's taught at the academy." She paused, but Naruto didn't speak, so she continued. "The Kyuubi attacked our village and was fought off by our ninjas for 4 days. A lot of people died, before the Yondaime managed to defeat him, losing his life in the process. The Yondaime didn't defeat the Kyuubi," Naruto said bluntly. Hinata's eyes went wide. He couldn't. Instead, he selected a newborn child, the umbilical cord freshly cut, and bound up all 9 tails of the fox within the infant's navel, imprisoning its soul. That baby was sacrificed for the safety of the entire village, to become a living vessel for the imprisonment of the fox. Naruto's eyes were haunted by a lifelong hurt. "Hinata, I was that baby. I'm the vessel. The fox is inside me." Hinata gasped, and suddenly, everything made sense. The hatred and contempt of every adult in the village. The 2 different chakra that Neji swore were mixing inside of him. His almost limitless chakra and stamina. It all made sense now. She tightened her grip on his hands when he looked down and tried to pull away. He looked up, and almost died from pure relief when she smiled at him. "Oh Naruto. It doesn't matter." "It doesn't?" He blinked rapidly at her. "No, you are you, not the fox. He's bound in here." She freed one hand to touch his stomach. "Not here." She touched his chest above his heart, "or here." She touched his temple. "Your heart, your mind and your soul belong to you." She traced his whiskers, which, again, made him shiver. "It does explain these though." Naruto let out a burst of surprised laughter that sounded almost like a bark, and Hinata giggled. "It also explains that adorable, fox, grins he gets." She thought. "Naruto, nobody who knows you would see you as the fox. The Hokage-san sees you as her little brother, Iruka-sensei, Kakashi-san and Jiraiya-san all see you as a student. Sakura-chan and Konohamaru-kun see you as their older brother. Kiba-kun and Lee-kun see you as a sparring partner, and Neji-ni-san and Tenten-chan see you as someone they respect. Shino-kun, Shikamaru-kun, Choji-kun and Ino-chan see you as a friend. You see? You are not the fox. You are Naruto." "What about you, Hinata?" Naruto asked, his fierce blue eyes locked on hers. "What do you see when you look at me?" "Me?" Hinata smiled and ran her hands through his spikes. "I see a head full of blonde spikes that I always want to smooth down." Her fingers moved down to rest next to his eyes. "I see a pair of wild blue eyes that never miss a thing in battle, but can be frustratingly blind outside of it." "No, shush," she insisted when he opened his mouth to talk. "My turn, Naruto." Her fingers moved down to his whiskers, and he shivered. "I see whiskers that have always fascinated me, and seem amazingly sensitive." Hinata's small fingers moved over his lips. Naruto kissed her fingertips, just like he had at the training grounds, unable to stop himself. Hinata smiled, even as her heart pounded and her mouth went dry. But she went on. Naruto needed this, and she would not let him down. "I see a mouth that can give me a smile that rivals the sun in warmth and brightness, especially at night." She slid her hands down to his shoulders. "I see 2 arms that are strong enough to lift me up over your head." Her hands moved back up to frame his face with her hands. "And I see a former runt and dead last, who has grown into a man who is one of the tallest ninjas in the village, as well as one of the strongest. I see a strong and respected member of the Konoha ninjas. What I don't see is any fur or tails. I don't see any fox. I only see you, Uzumaki Naruto, my best and closest friend. Thanks Hinata. A huge smile spread across his face and he impulsively hugged her. Hinata hugged him back, burying her face in his neck. He kissed the top of her head. Thank you so much Hinata. Thank you. Naruto murmured into her hair. Your acceptance means so much to me. Thank you. Oh Naruto. Hinata pressed closer to Naruto's chest. I could never not accept you. You are one of my precious people. And you're one of mine Hinata. Naruto rested his cheek on top of her head, then laughed quietly when he heard her yawn, and remembered that she had been exhausted even before they got home. He scooped her up in his arms, chuckling over her half-hearted protests. Hinata, you're so tired that you can barely keep your eyes open. Let's just go to bed, okay? Okay Naruto. She agreed, already half asleep. She rested her head on his shoulder and closed her eyes, snuggling up against him. You'll stay with me, right? The question was a tiny whisper, but Naruto heard her anyway. Shush, go to sleep. Of course I'll stay with you. Gotta keep those nightmares away you know. Thank you. Hinata whispered, then she fell asleep, right in Naruto's arms. Naruto couldn't wipe the grin off of his face, she was just so cute. Naruto didn't even bother to turn on the light. Enhanced eyesight combined with familiarity allowed him to lay Hinata on his bed, and then changed into his own pajama in complete darkness. As soon as he had changed into a pair of pajama pants and a black t-shirt, he slid into bed next to Hinata. She was fast asleep, yet when she felt his presence, she rolled to face him, snuggling up against his chest. Naruto, she whispered. Naruto smiled and wrapped his arms around her, burying his nose in her hair. Slowly, surrounded by her warmth and the scent of her hair, he fell asleep. Naruto woke up suddenly, and was a little confused. It was still dark, and he usually slept all the way through the night. Then there was a loud banging at his door. Hinata sat up next to him, and Naruto realized what had woken him up. What is it? Hinata mumbled, rubbing at her eyes. Someone's at the door. Can you see who it is? Naruto asked with a yawn. Hinata nodded and activated her Byakugan. She looked toward the door, and her eyes went wide. It's Neji. She scrambled out of bed, followed by Naruto. Sure, this time he knocks. Naruto muttered, rushing to the door. Naruto. Hinata warned. Naruto threw her a grin as he yanked open the door. A grin that faded as soon as he saw Neji. The young Hyuga, genius, had a cut on his forehead that dripped blood down his face, was cradling his side with his right arm in a way that told Hinata that some ribs were broken, and his left arm hung almost sickeningly loose, it was dislocated. Neji ni-san, what happened? Hinata, it's your father. The grass ninjas attacked again, and they drugged him and took him hostage when they found you gone. They want to exchange him for you, and the clan elders have agreed. What? Naruto burst out. He moved to block Neji, pushing Hinata back behind him. They'll kill her. Damn it Naruto, I know okay? I know. Neji paled and swayed a little. Why do you think I nearly got myself killed trying to get her father back from the grass ninjas? And then almost killed myself trying to get here before the Hyuga guards the elders sent out find out where she is. It won't take them long to find her, not with the Byakugan. Neji slumped against the doorway, and would have fallen, but Naruto caught him and helped him to the couch. You two have got to get out of here. Neji insisted, his face white and drenched with sweat. Naruto, listen to me. The two of you have got to find a way to save Hiyashi-san, but not at the risk of Hinata's life. I've got an idea, Naruto said. He turned to Hinata and grabbed her hand. Hinata, do you trust me? Of course Naruto, Hinata said instantly. Naruto squeezed her hand, then stepped back. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, he yelled, producing 5 shadow clones. Hinata, 1 clone would take you the Hyuga compound. I'm going to use the others to help me gather up the other Rookie 9 and Team Guy. He grabbed Hinata's shoulders and squeezed. Use your chakra sensing abilities right before you get to the gate. I'll leak a tiny bit of chakra so you know if I'm there. Trust me, I won't let you down. Okay? He paused, then turned to Neji. I'll send Tenten here to you. Are you going to be okay until she can get here? I'll be fine, Neji said. Naruto noted that, now that he was sitting down, Neji looked better. He had gotten some of his color back, he was breathing better, and he wasn't sweating anymore. Okay, he decided. He nodded at one of his clones, which moved over to stand by Hinata. Give me 20 minutes to get everyone together. Naruto motioned at his other 4 clones to follow him as he started towards the door. Let's go. Naruto, wait. Hinata ran after him and grabbed his arm. When he turned to face her, she threw her arms around his neck. Be safe, she whispered, pressing her face into his shoulder and inhaling his scent. Please Naruto, just be safe. I will. Naruto hugged her back. We'll get through this, I promise. I believe you. Hinata pulled back and stared up at him. Just be safe, okay? Okay, Naruto promised. Hinata went up on tiptoe and kissed his jaw. She was aiming for his cheek, but couldn't quite reach. Naruto chuckled and kissed her cheek in return. Be careful Hinata, I'm not going to lose you now. Then he and the 4 clones left. Hinata gently tended Neji's head wound, and made him comfortable before she and the remaining clone also left. Hinata and the Naruto clone took 15 minutes to get it to the Hyuga compound. Hinata could have easily made it in less than 5 minutes, but she needed to give Naruto all the time she could, so that he could get everyone together, and work out a plan. As she neared the compound, she thought she saw a flash of orange out of the corner of her eye, but couldn't be sure, and when she turned, nothing was there. She carefully spread out her chakra, and sighed in relief when she caught a flash of Naruto's chakra. It was brief, like a brush of fingertips, and then it was gone. But that tiny contact made her smile, and slowed her pounding heartbeat. He was here, he had come, with the remaining rookie 9 and Lee, to help her and back her up. She could be brave and strong for him. Tonight, she would act like a Hyuga, for him. The Naruto clone grinned and gave her a thumbs up when she stood up straight, her head held high and Byakugan activated. With her Hyuga blood limit, opening the heavy main gate was no problem, it had been designed that way. The clone flanked her like a formal bodyguard, one hand resting on the handle of a kunai knife. Hinata's eyes narrowed when she realized that there was a standoff happening there in the main courtyard. The grass nins, masked but still recognizable, were on the far right. Her father lay in front of them, unconscious. Hinata's Byakugan quickly discovered that he had been poisoned, the source a tiny dart in his neck. It had probably been administered while he slept because his pajamas were undisturbed. The entire Hyuga family, except for the youngest children, was on the far left. The clan elders, her father's advisors and her and Hanabi's early teachers, stood in front. Hanabi, as heiress, stood with them. Her face was white, but she stood firm. Hinata and the clone stopped in between them. I'm here, Hinata announced. She glared at the elders, her Byakugan blazing. But I refuse to be a bargaining chip, as if I'm worthless to this clan. She whirled toward the grass nins, already gathering her chakra in her hands. I'm here to fight. I'm not running, and I won't let you hurt my family. Hinata rushed the grass nins. There were 5 of them, inside and probably 4 outside on guard. Grass nins always worked in teams of 3 or multiple teams of 3. Just before she reached them, there were 4 thumps just behind them, inside the compound. With her Byakugan, Hinata saw what it was before the grass nins. Kiba, Lee, Sakura and Choji had all jumped over the wall, with the dead bodies of 4 grass nins. They each held the bodies underneath them, so that the dead weight absorbed the impact of the landing. The grass nins had all spun around, expecting an attack from behind. Their information had stated that Hinata wasn't a threat, so they turned their backs on her. And that was a mistake. Hinata had spent years focusing on making her chakra thinner, stronger, and more flexible, until her chakra was wire-thin, razor-sharp and extremely loose and flexible, and Hinata could wield it like an invisible whip. She brought her right hand up and flicked her wrist from left to right. All 5 of the grass nins grunted as they were knocked off their feet by something that tore through the skin on their backs like a razor-sharp kunai knife. All of them were now bleeding heavily, but Hinata knew that wouldn't keep them down. And that's why you should never turn your back on a misfit. Naruto jumped down from the top of the fence, and his clone disappeared. They just might surprise you. And you won't like it, I promise you. He motioned at the 4 bodies. They underestimated us, which was a mistake. The largest grass nin stumbled to his feet and sneered at Naruto as he drew a kunai knife. Stupid genin, you're out of your league. You weren't listening, Naruto scolded, shaking his head. He rushed the man, blocked the kunai knife with one hand, then shoved his hand against the man's stomach. Don't ever underestimate me, he snarled. Rasengan. The blue orb of explosive chakra formed in Naruto's hand and he pressed it into the man's body. The man screamed, and Naruto jumped back, leaving the Rasengan inside the ninja. There was a muffled explosion, and the man dropped like a puppet with its strings cut. With her Byakugan, Hinata could see why. The Rasengan had exploded inside of him, shredding his internal organs and killing him instantly. Hey! One of the grass nins started towards Naruto, then froze, a shocked look on his face. Hey man, you're just too troublesome, Shikamaru said, dropping down from the fence, where he had been standing in the shadows. Naruto interrupted a perfectly good game of shogi to drag me here, so let's finish this. Kage Nui. The grass nin collapsed as Shikamaru's shadow stabbed him through the heart. Hinata smiled when she heard Shikamaru snort. Well, that wasn't worth the trouble. You're impossible, Shikamaru, Naruto complained, grinning up at the young strategist, who shook his head and rolled his eyes, yet grinned back. Hinata knew that despite the almost daily bickering the two engaged in, they were good friends. The three remaining grass nins were nervous now, shifting their weight from foot to foot, unsure where to look or what to guard against. Hinata could see thought their masks, and a very Naruto-like smirk appeared on her face when she realized something. They were afraid. One of them suddenly jerked with a gasp, then turned on his comrades, burying a kunai knife in the back of one's neck, severing the spinal cord and killing the ninja instantly, before he could scream. Hinata could now see Ino on Shikamaru's back, completely limp as she used her mind-body switch jutsu. She released her prisoner, who stumbled back, raised her head and smiled at Hinata, who returned the smile. She noticed that Ino made no move to get off of Shikamaru's back, and he made no indication that he wanted her to. The last two ninjas were terrified. This was supposed to be a simple kidnapping. Their information had stated that the Hyuga clan considered Hinata a lost cause, and that she wasn't especially close to anyone in the village. But their spies had missed something. Even though they were now down to 8, the Rookie 9 was still the Rookie 9, and Hinata was one of theirs. If you messed with one, you risked calling down the wrath of the remaining members. Plus, Lee had been Neji's teammate and rival for so long, he considered Hinata a friend, and he never allowed anyone to go after his friends without getting involved. There were only 2 grass nins left, and they seemed to be frozen in shock, especially when Naruto smirked and began to form another Rasengan. Shino stepped forward, out of the shadows, to stand on the other side of Hinata. Now, he and Naruto were flanking Hinata like some sort of honor guard. This is crazy. One of the nins burst out. Hinata couldn't see his face clearly even with her Byakugan, but he sounded very young. And very scared. Like Naruto said, underestimating us is a mistake. Shino said in his quiet, unassuming voice. And you won't live to regret it. Shino's chakra-eating bugs began to gather at his feet, then swarmed over the ninja that had remained silent. He barely had time to scream as they covered his body and sucked his chakra dry. What was that? The last nin started to jump forward, but stopped when Hinata swung her head towards him, stopping him in his tracks with a Hyuga glare. Naruto smirked and started to pour more chakra into his Rasengan, making it glow bright and spin faster. Naruto, no. Hinata touched the blonde's arm. He's mine. Of course Hinata. Naruto closed his hand over the Rasengan, reabsorbing the chakra. He crossed his arms over his chest. Oh, this was going to be interesting. Hinata flicked out her chakra whip and wrapped it around the last nin, pinning his arms to his sides, and combined it with her gentle fist style to cut off his chakra with the whip. He cried out as the chakra cut deeply into him when Hinata pulled it tight. Keeping it taut, Hinata ran in and kicked the boy's knees, cutting off his chakra to his legs and dropping him to his knees. Who's the traitor who let you in? Hinata demanded, yanking off his mask. He heart twisted when she finally saw how young he really was. For Kami's sake, he couldn't have been older than 11, Hanabi's age. I don't know, he whispered, his shoulders slumping. It was always one of the older ones who handled that. Tears began to flow down his face and drip down to mix with all the blood Hinata's chakra whip was drawing. I swear I don't know. Please, stop, it hurts. The boy was begging, but Hinata knew she couldn't let him live and send him home. It would be seen as a sign of weakness and the attacks would never stop. The Byakugan was too important and powerful. But she regretted that this child's life would be used to send a message. She couldn't do anything about that. But she could make sure that the last face he saw wasn't a cold Hyuga mask but her real self. It was the least she could do. Allowing her mask to slip away, revealing her warm and caring personality, Hinata released her hold on the chakra whip, leaving it still wrapped around him. She cradled the boy's face in her hands, wiping away his tears. "Shush, it's all right. What's your name, honey?" "Katashin," he whispered, gazing up at her. "It's okay, Katashin-kun." She smiled down at him, a big sister smile, not a victory smile. She lifted one hand and touched his forehead. "Close your eyes, Katashin-kun," she whispered. He obeyed. Her fingers touched his long eyelashes that lay on his cheeks. "It'll be okay, Katashin-kun. I promise." She kissed his forehead. And then, with tears in her eyes, she quickly snapped his small, graceful neck, ending his life quickly and painlessly. His body tumbled to the ground, his tears still wet on his cheeks and glittering on his lashes. Hinata stepped back from the body, but didn't return to Naruto or Shino. "Shino, can your bugs help my father?" she asked, purposely keeping her back to everyone. "Of course." Shino bowed his head at her back, and knelt by her father. Naruto stepped up to her and took her hand. "Naruto." She turned her head to look at him. He kept his face serious as he reached up to cup her cheek, catching an escaping tear with his thumb. "Hinata, are you okay?" "I think so," she whispered back. She moved toward him, and he enfolded her in his arms, not caring what the Hyuga clan thought. Hinata needed him, so he would be strong enough for the both of them. Hinata gripped his jacket in her hands and hid her face in his chest, her forehead resting in the hollow at the base of his neck. "I am so proud of you," he whispered, wrapping himself around her. He even wrapped his chakra around her like a huge blanket that warmed her heart and body. "Thank you, Naruto." "Of course." Naruto ran his fingers through her hair. Hinata pulled back from him and looked up at him. She framed his face with her hands, her fingers resting on his whiskers. He met her gaze, and suddenly, she knew it was now or never. "Naruto? Yeah? Hinata, what is it?" "I love you. I have for a long time, since we were at the academy. And these last few days have just intensified it." "Oh Hinata." Naruto was grinning like an idiot, but he couldn't stop. He buried one hand in her hair, cupping the back of her head. His other hand cupped the back of her neck. Then he rested his forehead on hers. "I love you too. Not as long as you obviously, but you have been one of my precious people for a long time. I'm not sure when it happened, but it's happened. I'm in love with you too, Hinata." Shino suddenly materialized next to Hinata, which caused Naruto to jump slightly and growl at him. Damn it, couldn't he and Hinata get 5 seconds to themselves? Obviously, Hinata was thinking the same thing, because she sighed in frustration as she turned to Shino. "What is it, Shino-kun?" "I have good news, Hinata-chan. I've cleared the poison from your father's body. He'll be a little weak tomorrow, but he'll make a full recovery." "Thank you, Shino-kun," Hinata said, letting go of Naruto so she could reach out and grip Shino's hand. "There's more," Shino said, giving his sweet teammate a very rare smile. "It's a blood poison. Whoever makes the poison has to activate it with their own blood. My bugs also said that the blood in the poison tastes similar to your father's." Shino watched Hinata's eyes go wide in understanding, then stone cold with rage, and felt a swell of pride for his teammate. She might have been considered weak by her clan, but she was smart, smarter than they gave her credit for, and very dedicated to her training as a medic nin. A training that called for a vast knowledge of poisons, something Shino had helped her with. "That means the poison was made by a Hyuga," she said. Shino nodded. "And recently," he added. "Hey, that's right. Blood poisons decay quickly, don't they? You can't store them, right?" Naruto asked. He didn't have the same knowledge of poisons that Shino and Hinata did, but he was far from stupid, so he knew a little. Hinata nodded. "Right, they are only effective for a day. It had to be the traitor." "Exactly. Blood poisons must use the blood of the person who makes them. They don't work otherwise." Hinata swayed suddenly, and Naruto stepped close and let her lean against him to hide it from the Hyugas. "Hinata, are you okay?" "I'm just really tired." She smiled up at him. "I'm okay now. You sure?" "Positive." "Okay then." Naruto gave her a quick hug, and then let her stand on her own in front of her clan. "Shino-kun, can your bugs identify the person the blood came from?" "Sure they can. All they need is a sample." "Like a pricked finger? That'll work. It doesn't have to be a large sample." "All right." Hinata took a deep breath, then walked over to stand in front of her clan. Shino and Naruto flanked her like bodyguards, and Lee and the rest of the Rookie 9 moved to stand behind them, supporting her. All of you will offer Shino-kun's bugs a blood sample. Hinata's voice was soft, yet strong and carried easily across the courtyard. A single pricked fingertip will suffice. Why should we? A branch member asked defiantly. Because there is a traitor among you. Guards were purposely moved away from my room, which is why I was secretly moved out of the house, and why the Hokage-sama assigned Naruto-kun as my bodyguard. Then, tonight, my teammate Shino-kun discovered that father, your clan head, was poisoned with a blood poison. A blood poison that was activated using the blood of a Hyuga. Hinata's voice held an edge sharper than the sharpest kunai knife. You can't order us to do anything. Yes, I can. I am the Hyuga heiress. You are bound by oath to obey me. She could have mentioned the curse seal, but Naruto noticed that she refused to go that way. You are not the heiress. You were too weak. Hanabi-sama is our heiress. Wrong. Hinata's voice snapped like one of her chakra whips. Hanabi-chan is not of age. She is only 11, and is too young to act as heiress while our father is incapacitated. I am her elder sister, and so I am the temporary ruler of the Hyuga clan by default. You don't have to like it. But you will obey me. You have no support. The man persisted. He looked a bit like Hiyashi, Naruto noticed, but colder and more arrogant, if that was possible. I support her, Naruto said, with just a hint of a growl in his voice. He also formed a small Rasengan briefly, threateningly, before reabsorbing it. As do I. Shino spoke next. And so do I. Lee spoke up. One by one, the rest of the Rookie 9 also voiced their support of Hinata. Hinata wanted to turn and smile at them, but knew she couldn't. Then she heard a voice that made her eyes go wide. We support Hinata-sama also. Neji said as Tenten helped him limp into the courtyard. He was pale, and his injured arm was strapped to his chest. You know that I'm loyal to Hiyashi-sama, and that I was injured trying to rescue him. But with him incapacitated, I support Hinata-sama as the temporary clan leader. So do I, Tenten added. And I have my weapons to back her up also. She glared at the Hyugas as she helped her boyfriend limp to stand by Naruto. Some of the less composed Hyugas paled. Tenten's weapons were widely, and justifiably, feared. Hanabi stepped forward and stood in front of Naruto, facing the rest of the clan. I support Hinata Oni-san. Hanabi announced. Atta girl Hanabi-chan, Naruto said, patting her on the shoulder. She smiled shyly at him over her shoulder, which made Naruto chuckle. It seemed like the Hyuga sisters were more alike than they wanted to admit. The branch member finally backed down, and the other followed. Hinata even pricked hers and Hanabi's fingers first for Shino's bugs, who informed Shino that neither sibling had made the poison. Then Naruto took a kunai knife and went from Hyuga to Hyuga, pricking their fingers, with Shino's bug following behind him. He reached the branch member who had challenged Hinata, and Naruto pulled his lips back in a silent snarl, showing off his long, fang-like canines. The man's eyes widened in fear, then narrowed in disgust. Filthy demon, the man hissed. Naruto rolled his eyes. Oh please, a little originality would be nice. Just give me your hand so we can get this over with. Come on, he urged impatiently when the man stalled. I've got better things to do today than stain a perfectly good kunai knife with your blue blood. Like spend some time alone with Hinata. He thought. The Hyuga scowled, yet held out his hand and let Naruto draw a small amount of blood from his finger for the bugs. Naruto moved on. When he reached the clan elders, Naruto simply ignored the looks of distaste. Naruto had only done about half of them when Shino stepped up to him. Which one? Naruto asked. That one. Shino indicated a tall, muscular man who looked vaguely like Neji. Naruto remembered seeing him in town once. He'd been talking to Hinata, who'd mentioned that he was the head of the Hyuga family guards. Hinata, who had followed Shino, blinking in surprise and looked devastated. Naruto wanted to step forward and hug her. He wanted to comfort her, sweep her off her feet, and carry her away. But he couldn't. He had to let her stand by herself in front of her clan, or they would never respect her. Sanetabi-san, are Shino-kun's bugs right? Are you the traitor? Hinata felt the betrayal more acutely now. When she was younger, Sanetabi had been friendly and kind, showing her how to hold and throw a shuriken and kunai knife with much more patience and encouragement than her father. Sanetabi looked like he was going to deny it, but one look at Hinata and her friends made him realize he couldn't get away with it now. "Yes, Hinata-san," he whispered. "But, why?" Hinata felt tears filling her eyes, but refused to let them fall. "For the good of the clan," Sanetabi said. Then he refused to say anymore. "Idiot." Naruto surged forward and shoved Sanetabi. Surprised and shocked, Sanetabi fell to the ground, with Naruto standing over him, snarling. "Hinata is a member of the clan, you moron. Betraying one member of the clan cannot be excused with, for the good of the clan." "Naruto, it's all right," Hinata said quietly from behind him, resting a hand on his arm. "Hinata." Naruto half turned toward her. "Really, Naruto?" Hinata said firmly. Naruto nodded and stepped back to flank Hinata. His face murderous, Neji started forward, shaking off Tenten's anxious hands. "Neji ni-san, no," Hinata ordered. Neji stopped, and allowed Tenten to pull him back, his face still furious. "That miserable piece of," he still muttered. "Shush, you need to calm down, your ribs." "Tenten. Baby, I'm fine. Humor me, Neji. Hinata-sama, he will pay for his betrayal." One of the clan elders said, his face blank with rage. He motioned for 2 guards to step forward. "He will be executed." "No," Hinata snapped. "All of us are ninjas of Konoha village first and members of the Hyuga clan second. And as ninjas of Konoha village, we must obey the laws of our village and the orders of our Hokage. Sanetabi-san has confessed his crime, so he will be taken into custody. But his punishment will be decided by the Godem, just like any other guilty criminal." "As you wish, Hinata-sama," the elder said with a small bow of respect. The guards escorted Sanetabi back into the house, followed by the rest of the clan, except Hanabi, who stayed by her sister. 2 Hyuga medics even picked up her father and carried him into the house. Hinata was relieved to see that he was moving slightly now, and regaining some color even though he was still asleep. As soon as the clan members, except for Neji and Hanabi, were in the house, Naruto walked up behind Hinata and wrapped his arms around her waist. He rested his chin on her shoulder, his cheek pressed against hers. She sighed and let her head rest against his blonde stubble rubbing against her cheek and making her smile. "Hey cutie," he whispered, squeezing her. She chuckled and closed her eyes as she snuggled back against his chest. "Hey," she whispered back, almost sagging against him when he nuzzled her cheek. "You all right?" he asked. "I'm tired." She turned in his arms and snuggled against his chest, wrapping her arms around his waist. "I'm so tired, Naruto." "Oh, Hinata." Naruto bent his head over her and pressed his lips against her hair. "Do you want to come back home with me? I should stay here tonight," Hinata said. "Shino-kun said that father will still be weak until tomorrow. The clan might need me. Last time I checked, Hanabi was still 11. I understand." He removed one arm from around her waist to touch her chin with his fingers and lifted her face up. "You were so strong and brave today, Hinata. I was so proud of you." He beamed at her, and Hinata saw the truth in his eyes and melted. He was proud of her strength and courage. "Oh, Naruto." Hinata smiled up at him and raised both of her hands to his face. "You made me strong and brave. You had faith in me, and that faith gave me strength and courage." "Thank you." "You're welcome, Hinata." Naruto moved his hand from her chin to her hair. Hinata smiled when she felt his fingers slid into her hair and she cuddled against his chest, closing her eyes and sighing. Naruto ran his fingers through her hair as she cuddled against him. He loved the way her hair felt, like blue-black silk sliding through his fingers. Finally Hinata forced herself to pull back, and Naruto forced himself to let her go, then snatched her hand just before she got out of reach. "Sweet dreams, Hinata." He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it. "I'll see you in the morning." "Good night, Naruto. I'll be waiting for you." Hinata stepped forward and kissed Naruto's cheek. Then she slowly walked backwards, keeping her hand in his for as long as she could. And when their fingers slipped apart, she still kept her eyes locked on his, pale lavender on blue. She gave him one last smile and disappeared into the house. "Damn it, Naruto. Make it harder for the rest of us, why don't you?" Kiba complained, throwing an arm around Naruto's shoulders. "Huh? Once you and Hinata start doing that romantic shit in public, none of the girls will accept anything less from any of us." "Kiba-kun's right, Naruto-ni-chan." Sakura came up and playfully pushed Kiba away from Naruto. "He's a dork, but he's right." "Ah, Sakura-chan. Why so cruel? He stepped closer, and Naruto's arm shot out, blocking Kiba's advance. Whoa there Kiba, hands to yourself, you're no fun. I'm assuming you like your arms where they are. Sakura-chan will break them off. Ouch. Kiba paled, then looked around and brightened. Oh, look, Ino and Shikamaru are fighting again. Then his face fell. Ah, damn it. Shikamaru apologized. Damn it, Kiba, you need to stop this. It's bad for your health to be a pervert around Kunichi. Why don't you go romance a nice village girl? Naruto said, laughing. He couldn't help it, Kiba was entertaining if nothing else. It's no fun without the danger or injury. Kiba informed him. Behind Kiba, Shino put his head in his hands with a groan of the truly victimized. Naruto laughed and shook his head. Then he turned and smiled at Hanabi, who was standing with Neji. They were the only Hyugas left in the courtyard. Naruto crossed to the young heiress and smiled down at her. Hey there Hanabi-chan. He pulled her into a rough playfully hug and mussed his hair. Thanks for standing up for Hinata. I know it meant a lot to her. No, thank you Naruto-san. Hanabi said. Naruto kept his hands on her shoulders as he stepped back to see Hanabi's face. For what? For loving Hinata one-chan. She loves you so, and she needs you. I love her Hanabi-chan. Never doubt that. He grinned and squeezed her shoulders. It's late. You should go to bed. He turned her toward the house and gave her a tiny shove. Go. And Hanabi went. She approves of you, Neji said. What about you? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. Well, I don't disapprove. Neji said grudgingly. Without another word, he turned and let Tenten help him into the house. Naruto just smiled and shook his head. It was the best he was going to get out of the stoic ninja and he knew it. He turned to face the rest of the group. All right guys, he announced. Let's get out of here. Unfortunately, when Hinata woke up the next morning, there was a note on her pillow from Naruto, explaining that Ebisu had asked Naruto to help extract Konohamaru and his teammates from some kind of situation. Naruto didn't know specifics, but he would catch up with her later and tell her all about it. Hinata was a little disappointed, but told herself that Naruto was a Konoha ninja, just like her. She couldn't have him all to herself all the time. In fact, Naruto didn't catch up with Hinata until just before noon, while she was running errands. Naruto snuck up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, kissing her cheek at the same time. There you are, he whispered. There you are, Hinata replied with a grin. What happened to Konohamaru and his team? They got themselves buried up to their necks in rock. How? I think they're embarrassed. They wouldn't say. Well, they adore you, Hinata said. Naruto grinned. They're great kids. I have fun with them. I think it's cute how they idolize you, Hinata told him. Naruto nuzzled her cheek and she giggled. Then Naruto looked at his watch and grimaced. Sorry Hinata, I had to go. Tsunade wanted to see me. I think she got some mission or other for me. Or she wants a report on what happened last night. I'll see you later Hinata. He removed his arms from around her waist and stepped back. Bye Naruto, Hinata said. He gave her a foxy grin and waved as he started to walk away. But Hinata couldn't stand it anymore. Naruto, she yelled. He stopped and turned to face her, a question in his eyes. Finally pushed past the point of caring about the Hyuga image, Hinata dropped everything and ran to him. Naruto opened his arms, and Hinata leapt into them. Naruto stumbled back a few steps, automatically wrapping his arms around her upper thighs to support her. Hinata wrapped her legs around Naruto's waist, and pulled her upper body back slightly. Naruto had to look up at her, a new experience for them. Hinata framed his face with her hands and stared down into his deep blue eyes. Naruto opened his mouth to ask a question, but Hinata silenced him with a small finger on his lips. Shush, Naruto. No talking. She replaced her finger with her lips and kissed him. And Uzumaki Naruto, Konoha's #1 hyperactive ninja, forgot how to talk, forgot how to move, forgot how to think. He even forgot how to breathe. All he could do, once his eyes stopped spinning and his neurons started firing again, was close his eyes and kiss her back. Hinata's hands slipped off his cheeks. One hand slid into Naruto's hair, and her other arm wrapped around his neck. His mind still reeling, Naruto managed to stumble back and sit down on a bench, so that Hinata was straddling his lap. Now, with his hands free, Naruto slid his own hands into her hair and held her head so he could deepen the kiss. They didn't notice or care that they had an audience. Lee and Tenten were holding back an overprotective Neji. Kiba and Shino were staring, and Kiba was cursing Naruto under his breath. Sakura and Ino were both squealing, while Jiraiya paused in his research to smirk happily at his student. Shikamaru and Choji were just bored. And Tsunade, who had come looking for Naruto, smiled happily for her adopted brother while frantically thinking of arguments to calm down Hiashi when he found out. Hinata was the first to break their kiss and notice their audience. Naruto, she whispered, blushing. People are staring, so, let them stare. Naruto chuckled when he saw her blush deepen. When she started to protest, he touched a finger to her lips and then echoed her earlier words. Shush Hinata, no talking. And then he pulled her into another, long-awaited kiss.
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.